Chapter 8:17. Wall of Enlightenment is that the Lord Holy Master, Zhuo Wen and Yarou Yang, as well as Yarou Zuoling and the rest, all raised their heads and looked over. They saw the dazzling figure standing in the air. Even the left and right guardians and the 10 great elders are here. Yarou Yang and the rest also noticed the left and right guardians and the 10 great elders behind the Lord Holy Master. The shock on their faces became even more intense. The sect had actually sent out such a huge force. Could it be to capture this young man in front of them? Although they admitted that the young man in front of them was strong enough, it was not to the extent that the Lord Holy Master had to personally take him down. The 10 great elders should be able to take him down if they worked together. Wasn't this a little too much? Zhuowen raised his head slightly and looked past the left and right guardians. He fixed his gaze on the dazzling figure at the front and his eyes narrowed. This person was very strong and gave him a strong sense of oppression. From the exclamations of Yarou Yang and the rest, he knew that this dazzling middle-aged man was the Lord Shengzon. The Lord Holy Master is not weak. He is actually an initial stage Golden Venerate. His strength is comparable to the strength of the Cao and Feng family masters. Xiao Hei's voice rang out slowly. Zhuowen's gaze became even more solemn and at the same time, there was a hint of anticipation. Once he left the Dragon Vein, he would definitely make a trip to the Cao family, Feng family, and Grand family. He would definitely not let go of the 3 family masters. He was very clear that Cao Ji and Feng Tian were both at the early stage of the Golden Exalt realm while Grand Haohai was at the late stage of the Golden Exalt realm. Now that the Lord Shengzon's strength was comparable to Cao Ji and Feng Tian's strength, he wanted to see how strong an initial stage Golden Venerate was. Xiao Hei. How confident am I in dealing with the Lord Holy Master? Zhuowen suddenly asked. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Hei said in a deep voice, "You don't have a high chance of winning. However, if you can transform into your Dragonman form, you might be able to fight against the Holy Lord. However, your chances of winning are still not high. However, your defense in the Dragonoid state is even more abnormal than the Nirvana Virokana. It won't be that easy for the Holy Lord to kill you." Initially, Zhuowen had a look of disappointment on his face. However, after hearing Xiao Hei's words, his eyes lit up again. He didn't expect the defense of a partially materialized Dragonoid form to be so insane. "Who are you? Why did you barge into my Shengzon? Not only did you cripple Elder Nalan's cultivation, you even injured my 10 great elders and left and right protectors." The sacred leader looked down at Zhuowen. His thunderous voice was so loud that even the deaf could hear it. "What? Crippling Elder Nalan's cultivation and injuring the 10 great elders and left and right protectors?" When the sacred leader said this, Dazzle and the others were stunned. They naturally knew who Elder Nalan was. He was only an ultimate 8-wheel emperor. It was understandable that he wasn't the young man in front of them. However, the left and right protectors and the 10 great elders were all powerhouses of the Xuanzuan realm. 12 Xuanzuan realm powerhouses had joined forces, yet this young man still managed to injure them. Just how terrifying was this young man's strength? At this moment, the way Yarou Yang and the others looked at Zhuowen changed. They finally understood why the sacred leader had personally come out. It was because this young man's strength was too terrifying. At present, only the sacred leader could suppress him. "I originally didn't want to clash with your Shengzon. Unfortunately, that Elder Nalan made things difficult for me time and time again. That's why I fought back. To tell you the truth, I came to Shengzon for the Cliff of Enlightenment. You only need to let me stay in there for 3 years. After 3 years, I will leave." Zhuowen raised his head. His eyes were as calm as water as he spoke indifferently. "Your goal is the Cliff of Enlightenment?" the sacred leader asked with narrowed eyes. "That's right." Zhuowen nodded. The sacred leader's eyes flashed. "It's not impossible for you to stay in the Cliff of Enlightenment for 3 years. However, you must join my Shengzon. If possible, I am willing to give you the position of Great Protector. Your position is only below mine." Zhuowen was so young, yet he was able to defeat the 10 great elders and the left and right protectors. His future was limitless. Although Zhuowen had killed a lot of Shengzon's people, The sacred leader's view of the bigger picture was far more grandiose than others. Such a genius was hard to come by in 100 years. He wasn't someone the rest of Shenzhen could compare to. The other geniuses and elders of Shenzhen could be nurtured with time and resources. However, a peerless genius like Zhuowen could only be found by chance. He wasn't someone who could be nurtured with time and resources. What? Lord Sacred Leader, how can you give the position of Great Protector to this kid? This kid is so young, and he even killed Shenzhen's elders and disciples. His character isn't good enough. How can you be so careless? As soon as the Sacred Leader said this, the left and right protectors and the 10 great elders behind him stepped forward to persuade him. They wanted to prevent the Sacred Leader from making such a foolish decision. The Sacred Leader snorted coldly and said, I understand what happened at the mountain gate. It was all Nailan Xiong's fault. Such a monstrous genius actually planned to be driven out of the mountain gate. He even wanted to kill Nailan Hongyu. And you didn't distinguish right from wrong and directly attacked this little brother. In the end, it was you who relied on Shenzhen's power to bully the weak. Isn't that the case? Moreover, you are all elders. Even if you join forces, you still aren't a match for this little brother. Do you think you have the right to speak? As soon as the Sacred Leader said this, the left and right protectors and the 10 great elders all fell silent. It seemed that the Sacred Leader, who had always been calm, was finally a little angry. After saying this, the Sacred Leader no longer paid any attention to the left and right protectors. He looked at Zhuowen with a smile and said, What does little brother think of my proposal? Zhuowen looked at the Sacred Leader in surprise. This person was quite broad-minded. He didn't care about what he had done before and was instead so enthusiastic about recruiting him. Although he knew that the Holy Master had done this because he had taken a fancy to his powerful strength and talent, it remained that the Holy Master was stronger than him. However, to be able to do this, it could be said that he had done his utmost benevolence. Kid. Accept the Sacred Leader's proposal. Anyway, your goal is to comprehend the momentum of heaven and earth in the Enlightenment rock wall. In 3 years, the demonic creatures will break out of the seal. At that time, you will need to rely on Shenzhen's power. So, becoming Shenzhen's great protector won't be bad for you. Xiaohei suddenly said. After pondering for a moment, Zhuowen smiled and said, The Sacred Leader is indeed magnanimous. You don't care about this one's crime of killing. This one is impress. If the Sacred Leader doesn't mind, this one is willing to join Shenzhen. However, I have a free nature and don't want to be commanded by others, so... Kid. You're too much. The Sacred Leader has already given you the position of Great Protector. Don't you want to bear the corresponding responsibility? The left and right protectors said with displeasure. The Sacred Leader waved his hand and shook his head. It's fine. If you join Shenzhen, you will be one of Shenzhen's people. I won't restrict your personal freedom too much. Then, thank you for your generosity, Sacred Leader. Zhuowen smiled and cupped his hands in respect. Until now, I still don't know your name, little brother. Is it convenient for you to tell me? The Sacred Leader smiled faintly. Zhuowen. Hearing this, the Sacred Leader nodded and said to the left and right protectors and the 10 elders behind him, From now on, Protector Zhuo will be the great protector of Shenzhen. As long as it doesn't harm Shenzhen's interests, you are not allowed to disobey his orders. Do you hear me? The left and right protectors and the 10 elders heard this and their expressions turned ugly. Originally, they had followed the Sacred Leader and wanted to see the Sacred Leader completely suppress Zhuowen. However, they did not expect that Zhuowen would become their immediate superior. Yarrow Yang and the others were also shocked. It seemed that the Sacred Leader valued this young man very much. He had actually given him the position of Great Protector. The Sacred Leader leaped to Zhuowen's side and smiled. Protector Zhuo, since you want to step into the Enlightenment Cliff, I will personally bring you there. As he spoke, the Sacred Leader stepped onto the iron cable bridge and flew steadily toward the opposite cave. Zhuowen did not want to be outdone and followed closely behind. Soon, the two of them disappeared from everyone's sight. I really did not expect him to become the Great Protector. At the edge of the cliff, Yarrow Zueling stood next to Yarrow Yang. Her beautiful eyes stared at the gradually disappearing figure with a complicated expression. She did not know why, but she felt a trace of reluctance in her heart. At the same time, she also remembered the various things she had said to Zhuowen at the martial arts practice field. Now that she thought about it, she felt a sense of shame that she could not show her face. At that time, she had repeatedly said that the inner sect disciples were just good-for-nothings and that only the core disciples were worthy of her. However, now, the young man named Zhuowen was so powerful that even the 10 core disciples were no match for him. From the sacred leader's words, even the 10 elders and the left and right protectors had been defeated by him and had been given the position of great protector by the sacred leader. Therefore, when she recalled the words and tone she had said, Yarrow Zueling's face was full of bitterness. The one who was truly unworthy was not Zhuowen, but her sister. Let's leave. This person is too far away from us. He is not an existence that we can come into contact with at our level. Yarrow Yang's sharp senses noticed that Yarrow Zueling's expression was not right. He shook his head and sighed with emotion. After entering the cave, Zhuowen discovered that there was actually another world inside. The space inside was extremely vast, like a hall. Inside the cave, there were rock walls that were as smooth as a mirror. On the surface of the rock walls, there were densely packed words that looked like ants. While staring at the words on the rock walls, Zhuowen seemed to be able to feel a strange power. His entire body was rooted to the ground. In his eyes, the motionless words on the rock walls seemed to be constantly swimming at this moment, like living tadpoles. How magical! Is this the enlightenment rock wall? Feeling the strange feeling that the surrounding rock walls gave him, Zhuowen could not help but open his mouth to speak. The enlightenment rock wall has all kinds of magical powers that can increase your comprehension ability. Although the effect is not as obvious as that of the mystic comprehending realm, it is a subtle effect that can be sustained over a long period of time. The sacred leader seemed to have noticed Zhuowen's surprise and explained faintly. Nodding his head, Zhuowen also realized that the feeling that the enlightenment rock wall gave him was similar to that of the mystic comprehending realm. However, it was not as strong. You should have comprehended the power of concept to the peak of perfection, right? Are you planning to rely on the enlightenment rock wall to comprehend the power of heaven and earth? Chapter 8:18. Light Potential O. Why does the Holy Lord say so? Zhuowen asked cautiously as his eyes flashed. The Holy Lord didn't care about the cautious Zhuowen and smiled faintly. In front of the mountain gate, I sensed your battle with the left and right protectors. I know that you have grasped the peak of perfection's spear intent. Your talent is indeed terrifying. Being able to comprehend the peak of perfection concept at such a young age is rare and commendable. On the other hand, above the concept energy was the illusory force of the heavens and earth. Didn't you enter the enlightenment rock wall for this? Zhuowen frowned slightly. It seemed that the Holy Lord in front of him wasn't simple. He was actually so familiar with the concept force and the force of heaven and earth. He knew that Lu Hantian, as a heavenly venerate powerhouse, didn't know that there was an even more powerful force of heaven and earth in the concept force. Otherwise, Lu Hantian wouldn't have kept it from him. Don't be surprised. I once meditated in front of the enlightenment rock wall for 100 years and comprehended a force of heaven and earth. This is my force. The Holy Lord waved his sleeve and countless lights flashed out, covering the entire stone hall. It was as if the entire world didn't exist at this moment. The only thing that existed was the endless blazing light. Within the light, Zhuowen was almost unable to open his eyes due to the piercing light. At this moment, a trace of hesitation and helplessness appeared in his heart. His entire body had nowhere to hide under this terrifying light. Whoosh! The light faded and the world in front of him returned to the environment of the stone hall. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with confusion. Is this the force of heaven and earth? Zhuowen muttered to himself. His heart couldn't help but tremble. The heavens and earth were filled with dazzling light that sealed off all his senses, causing him to lose all contact with the outside world. He knew that if the Holy Lord attacked him at this time, he wouldn't be able to resist at all. He might even be killed by the Holy Lord. Thinking of this possibility, Zhuowen's back broke out in a cold sweat. The The corners of his mouth couldn't help but tremble and his face was extremely pale. This is the momentum of heaven and earth that I have comprehended. I call it the momentum of light. After all, there are countless elements in the world. If you can comprehend an element, you will be able to use that element. The sacred lord glanced at Zhuowen and explained. Light force. When Zhuowen recalled the feeling of helplessness he felt when he was surrounded by countless rays of light, he felt a wave of lingering fear. This light was so terrifying that it could actually seal a person's perception within countless rays of light. Moreover, the sacred lord was truly terrifying. Although he was only at the initial stage of the Golden Venerate realm, the sacred lord who had comprehended the light force was actually comparable to a heavenly Venerate warrior. The momentum of the world had a terrifying effect on a martial artist's strength. Thinking back to how Zhuowen had wanted to challenge the Holy Lord, Zhuowen couldn't help but bitterly smile. If the sacred lord hadn't comprehended the light force, then Zhuowen would have the strength to fight. However, the sacred lord who had the light force could easily kill Zhuowen. Even if he used his dragonman form, it would still be difficult for him. Moreover, from what the sacred lord had said, the momentum of the world was just a general term. There were many types within it. For example, if the sacred lord had comprehended the light force, then there would definitely be wind force, fire force, thunder force, and so on. Zhuowen had comprehended spear intent, so if he had comprehended the momentum of the world, then it should be spear force. Sacred lord. This one has killed many of your Shenzhen people. Not only did you give me the position of great protector, you even explained to me about the momentum of the world. I don't think there is such a selfless good person in this world. Suddenly, Zhuowen turned his head and stared at the sacred lord in front of him. His gaze became extremely dignified with a trace of suspicion. The sacred lord shook his head and a bitter smile appeared on his face. The reason why this one is helping you is naturally because I have a motive. Hearing this, Zhuowen's pupils shrank. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he stared at the sacred lord. He knew that the sacred lord was about to explain the reason. This world has existed for tens of thousands of years. At that time, there weren't humans in this world, but endless demonic creatures. These demonic creatures enslaved humans and fed on them. Humans were reduced to existences that were worse than pigs and dogs. They lived in humiliation. Until one person, a daoist who rode a pale white dragon, arrived here. This person's methods were heaven-defying and his strength was terrifying. When he attacked, countless demonic creatures were destroyed. Almost all the demonic creatures in this world disappeared. However, some demonic creatures led their descendants and hid in the depths of the earth. After the demonic creatures were destroyed, that daoist didn't say a word and left this world. Since then, our human race has continued to multiply and grow stronger, dominating this world. At this point, the sacred lord's expression became even more troubled. He continued, unfortunately, after tens of thousands of years, the descendants of the demonic creatures underground have grown stronger and stronger. Their numbers have also increased. They are planning to invade the surface. The entrance to the demonic creature's seal is in my Shenzhen. The seal can only last for 3 years. After 3 years, the seal will be broken and the demonic creatures will come out from underground and invade the surface. When that time comes, the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. Furthermore, these demonic creatures are extremely strange. Normal forces can't harm them at all. The only thing that can restrain them is the power of the universe. Although this one has comprehended the power of the universe, it is difficult for one person to take charge alone. I can't stop so many demonic creatures. However, Guardian Zhuo, you have appeared. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. No wonder the Sacred Lord was so enthusiastic about recruiting him. He wanted to invite him to fight against the demonic army 3 years later. However, Zhuowen soon had new doubts. He asked, "In this world, are you the only one who can comprehend the power of the universe? Can't other geniuses comprehend it?" The Sacred Lord shook his head and sighed, "Almost none. Every year, we recruit geniuses from the outside world. Unfortunately, in Shenzhen, other than the successor of the sect leader, the other cultivators can't comprehend the power of the universe. They can't even comprehend the power of the universe. I don't know why this happened. At this point, the Sacred Lord's eyebrows furrowed. It was obvious that he had a headache about this phenomenon. It was indeed strange that he was the only one who could comprehend the power of the universe. However, Zhuowen didn't find it strange. It seemed that this situation was arranged by the Kanglong Taoist. After all, there were so many humans in this world. If there were many people who could comprehend the power of the universe, then even if the demonic creatures invaded, they wouldn't be a threat to the human race. Then, why would he, an outsider, need to come here to do the mission? The Kanglong Taoist's arrangement was obviously to let Zhuowen rely on himself to destroy the demonic creatures. The Sacred Lord should be the kind of person who would assist Zhuowen, similar to a key character in a game. Since ancient times, you are the first cultivator I have seen who has comprehended the concept of perfection. I know that you have a very high chance of comprehending the power of the universe. If you can comprehend the power of the universe, then the human race will have a better chance of defeating the demonic creatures in 3 years. At this point, the Sacred Lord's face turned red, and he became extremely excited. But Sacred Lord, are you so sure that I can comprehend the power of the universe within 3 years? Zhuowen suddenly asked. The Sacred Lord's face stiffened. He was so excited that he forgot about this. In the past, he had sat on the Enlightenment rock wall for 100 years before he comprehended the power of the universe. 3 years was indeed too short. You can only rely on luck. In the next 3 years, I will often come to this Enlightenment rock wall to explain the details of the power of the universe to you, as well as my comprehension, to help you comprehend it. The Sacred Lord said seriously. Zhuowen's eyes flashed, but his heart was a little excited. After all, the Sacred Lord was an existence who had comprehended the power of the universe. If he had the Sacred Lord's explanation and comprehension, it would be very beneficial for him to comprehend the power of the universe. The time needed to comprehend the power of the universe would also be greatly reduced. Protector Zhuo. Feel the wonders of the Enlightenment rock wall first. This token is my personal token. If you have any questions, you can use this token to summon me, and I will immediately come to explain it to you. The Sacred Master tossed a black token to Zhuowen with his right hand. After which, he gave Zhuowen a few instructions before leaving the Enlightenment rock wall. TSK. Your treatment is really generous. The great Shengzon's Sacred Lord will come whenever you summon him. Xiao He had unknowingly appeared in Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. She sat on Zhuowen's shoulder and snickered. Zhuowen shrugged and said, the Sacred Lord helping me is also helping him and Shengzon. This is just an equal exchange. That's true. You can feel the wonders of the Enlightenment rock wall first. This thing is very rare in the outside world. Xiao He suddenly said in a serious tone. Nodding his head, Zhuowen came to the center of the Enlightenment rock wall and stared at the words on one of the walls. Suddenly, the words were like small tadpoles that wriggled continuously in his vision. The wriggling became more and more frequent. In the end, they completely broke away from the wall and shot into Zhuowen's vision. Zhuowen was stunned on the spot, and the confusion in his eyes became even more intense. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. More and more small tadpole-like words broke away from the wall and surrounded Zhuowen's body. They entered Zhuowen's body through his acupuncture points, and Zhuowen gradually sank into a mysterious state of comprehension. Time gradually passed. It had been 3 months since Zhuowen had entered the Enlightenment rock wall. During these 3 months, the rumor that the Sacred Lord of Shengzon had appointed a 20-year-old young man as the Great Protector gradually spread throughout Shengzon. The position of the Great Protector was second only to the Sacred Lord. It had been vacant for a long time. No one had expected that the Sacred Lord would actually give the position to a 20-year-old young man. When they heard this news, many disciples in Shengzon were in disbelief. However, even more were doubtful and jealous. They couldn't believe that a 20-year-old young man had the qualifications to become the Great Protector. This was simply impossible. Some people even secretly spread the news that the Great Protector was actually the Sacred Lord's illegitimate son. That was why the Sacred Lord was so biased and gave the position to the young man. Chapter 8:19. Blood spear. The role of the Enlightenment rock wall was indeed very powerful. Inside, Zhuowen's perception was several times higher than usual. If he was in a good state, it could even reach a dozen times higher. With the improvement of his perception, Zhuowen became more familiar with the concepts and the momentum of the world. Every once in a while, the Holy Lord would come to the Enlightenment rock wall to explain the details of the momentum of the world to Zhuowen. At the same time, he would answer Zhuowen's questions. During this period of time, Zhuowen's progress was great. Although he knew nothing about the momentum of the world, he had already comprehended the great perfection spear intent to the extreme. The Holy Lord had once said that if he wanted to touch the momentum of the world, he would have to thoroughly master the concept. Only by thoroughly comprehending the concept would it be relatively easier to comprehend the momentum of the world. Therefore, Zhuowen was not in a hurry to directly comprehend the momentum of the world. Instead, he silently experienced his own spear intent, wanting to thoroughly comprehend it before doing anything else. Inside the rock wall, a figure stood quietly with his eyes closed. He held a bone spear in his hand. Waves of blue spear shadows were like countless snakes, dispersing around his body. A strange blue color filled the entire interior of the rock wall, causing the entire rock wall to turn into a strange blue world. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, his eyes were already filled with a deep blue color. A sharp light flashed in his eyes as Zhuowen moved. Like a bolt of lightning, he turned into a series of blue afterimages. A spear thrust forward, and the blue spear intent erupted, condensing into a blue crystal. This crystal turned into a blue spear, and it froze in mid-air in the same posture as before. Zhuowen took a step, turned around, and brandished the spear again. Every time he brandished it, he was able to display the power of the spear intent to the extreme, leaving behind a crystal spear shadow in mid-air. In 5 breaths of time, Zhuowen had brandished his spear hundreds of times, leaving behind hundreds of blue crystal spears around his body. Being within the 100 spears, Zhuowen's entire body was faintly discernible, appearing quite mysterious. After a year, I finally comprehended the spear intent thoroughly. At this moment, the might of spear intent is several times stronger than before. Looking at the hundreds of blue spears that were frozen in mid-air around him, Zhuowen revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. With a stomp of his foot, the hundreds of blue spears were instantly crushed into blue powder. Good. To be able to completely comprehend spear intent in a year, Protector Zhuo, your talent is indeed very strong. A clear voice rang out. The Saint Lord slowly walked out from the cave entrance, looking at Zhuowen with eyes full of admiration. In fact, this is all thanks to the experiences provided by Holy Master and the Enlightenment rock wall. Otherwise, I might not have been able to fully comprehend the spear intent so quickly. Zhuowen revealed a rare smile. The sacred leader shook his head and said, Protector Zhuo, you are too modest. My experiences are just external aids. If one's perception is not enough, giving him my experiences would be like playing the lute to a cow. But you are different. Even with my experiences, you were able to completely comprehend spear intent in a year. This is rare and commendable. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded and did not discuss this topic too much. Instead, he changed the topic and said, this time, I have completely mastered spear intent. I should be able to try to comprehend the momentum of heaven and earth, right? Yes. What you have comprehended is spear intent. Then, you should transform spear intent into spear force. This kind of weapon-type momentum of heaven and earth is very difficult to comprehend on your own. You must have the guidance of a predecessor. At this point, the sacred leader was a little embarrassed. His eyes flickered as if he was hesitating about something important. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a trace of understanding. What the sacred leader said was correct. The momentum of heaven and earth contained many elements. Wind, fire, thunder, clouds, and other natural elements could be directly sensed. However, some of the more abstract elements such as sabers, spears, staffs, and so on could not be directly sensed. Therefore, this also made it extremely difficult for cultivators who comprehended these abstract elements to transform intent realm into force. Then, sacred leader, do you have any good methods to make it easier for me to comprehend spear force? Zhuowen frowned and asked. The sacred leader was hesitant at this moment. Finally, as if he had made up his mind, he said, "Come with me to the sacred leader peak. I will take you to a place. That place will be very beneficial for you to comprehend spear force." After saying this, the sacred leader took a step and left the enlightenment rock wall. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a thoughtful look as he followed the sacred leader. From the hesitant look on the sacred leader's face, it was obvious that the place he wanted to take him to this time was not ordinary. Moreover, it was likely to be a very important place to the sacred leader. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 streams of light flashed by, attracting the attention of many disciples and elders in the Shengzon. Look! Isn't that the sacred leader? I didn't expect the sacred leader to come out of the enlightenment rock wall so early today. Over the past year, the sacred leader had frequently entered and exited the enlightenment rock wall, which naturally attracted the attention of many disciples and elders. They also knew that the sacred leader was doing this because of the Great Guardian. Therefore, for a moment, the Great Guardian, who many people had never seen before, became even more mysterious. Hey! There is another person beside the sacred leader. He seems to be a young man in his 20s. Moreover, this young man is flying side by side with the sacred leader. Who is he? It can't be that this kid is the mysterious Great Guardian, right? It is said that the Great Guardian is also a young man in his 20s. Everyone quickly noticed Zhuo Wen, who was standing beside the sacred master, and their expressions changed. They knew that only the mysterious Great Guardian could fly side by side with the sacred master at such a young age. Whoosh! The sacred leader and Zhuowen soon arrived at the sacred leader peak and stopped in the main hall at the peak. Let's go in, the sacred leader said and took the lead to step into the main hall. The main hall was resplendent and dazzling. When they reached the depths of the main hall, Zhuowen saw a rather large room. The sacred leader came to the center of the room and took a step forward. The sound of mechanisms activating could be heard. Rumble. Then, the entire room shook violently. Zhuowen clearly felt that this strange room was falling rapidly. The bottom of the room is hollow. When he felt the room falling, the first thing that came to Zhuowen's mind was an elevator. The principle was similar to the elevators on Earth, except that the room he was in was much larger and wider. After a while, an even more violent tremor came. Zhuowen almost lost his balance. Then, the tremor disappeared and everything calmed down. Zhuowen knew that he had reached the bottom. Let's go out. As he spoke, the sacred lord came to the door and opened it. Following that, a slightly piercing ray of light swept over, causing Zhuowen to squint his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he discovered that there was a completely different world outside the door. This was a huge space, and the only color in this space was the mournful color of blood. Below the blood-colored space, there was a land of ruins. On the land of ruins, there were countless piles of white bones. It was an extremely strange scene. Sacred leader, where is this? Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he came behind the sacred leader. He was puzzled. The sacred leader did not speak. He just quietly stared at the blood-colored space with a touch of sadness in his eyes. After a long time, the sacred leader said, "This is an arena built by the demonic creatures. Those demonic creatures treated humans like livestock. Not only did they kill humans, but they also built this arena for humans to kill each other for entertainment." Speaking of this, the sacred leader's body trembled. The sadness in his eyes turned into anger. He knew very well that if the demonic creatures broke through this world in 2 years, then the fate of the human race would be the same as tens of thousands of years ago. He could not let this happen. Back then, there were naturally many brilliant geniuses in the human race. There were also many who had comprehended the general trend of the world. However, once the demons discovered such geniuses, they would basically adopt the means of obliterating them, slaughtering them to death before they could grow up. Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed as he looked at the piles of bones in the blood-red space. He was shocked as well as furious. He was also a human, so he naturally felt furious and sorrowful when he saw so many of his kind being killed by demonic creatures. Look over there. That blood spear was left behind by a brilliant ancestor. That blood spear contains the spear force that ancestor comprehended. However, This ancestor's spear force has a very strong killing intent. You have to be careful. The sacred leader pointed with his right hand. At the end of his finger, there was a huge blood spear that was 20 feet tall. It was quietly inserted into the ground, and an obscure aura faintly seeped out from the blood spear. If you want to comprehend the spear force, then you must have the ability to pick up this blood spear. It contains the spear force that ancestor instilled in it. It will be very beneficial for you to comprehend the spear force. Speaking of this, the sacred leader's eyes became extremely solemn. He continued, however, this blood spear is filled with too much resentment and blood chi. If you are not careful, it is very likely that the resentment and blood chi will corrode your soul and cause you to go crazy. After speaking, the sacred leader looked at Zhuowen as if he was asking for Zhuowen's opinion. Then I'll try. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He took a step forward and arrived before the blood spear. He carefully examined it. The sacred leader nervously followed behind Zhuowen. He was always ready. If anything happened to Zhuowen, he was ready to separate him from the blood spear. The surface of the blood spear was covered with blood-red veins. It looked extremely strange and terrifying. Furthermore, these veins were constantly wriggling, adding a hint of eeriness to it. Without any hesitation, Zhuowen grasped the blood spear with his right hand. Immediately, a terrifying resentment invaded Zhuowen's soul. It wanted to enter the space between Zhuowen's eyebrows and take over his soul. What terrifying resentment and blood chi. Unfortunately, I have the blood demon. Just as the resentment and bloody aura was about to enter Zhuowen's sea of consciousness, the green coffin on his back immediately emitted a suction force. The resentment and bloody aura were immediately absorbed by the green coffin without any resistance at all. Rise. With a shout, Zhuowen easily pulled out the blood spear. At the same time, he played with it with great interest. Chapter 820. Memories. Looking at Zhuowen playing with the blood spear, the sacred leader was still in disbelief. The blood spear that contained the resentment and blood chi of the ancestors was picked up by this young man just like that. The resentment within the blood spear was so terrifying that even he found it difficult to bear. However, Zhuowen was able to pull it out so easily and even played with it with great interest. Seeing this scene, the sacred leader felt like he had been cheated. Sacred leader, this blood spear isn't as terrifying as you say it is, Zhuowen said with satisfaction as he waved the blood spear around. The corner of the sacred leader's mouth twitched when he heard this. He felt that Zhuowen's words were very infuriating. However, he temporarily restrained his emotions and said, "It seems that the blood spear is fated to be with you." Zhuowen laughed in his heart. If it weren't for the blood demon, it wouldn't have been so easy for him to bear the terrifying resentment within the blood spear. However, the moment he held the blood spear, Zhuowen found that the blood spear faintly contained a sharp and terrifying killing intent. This intent was very strong. Protector Zhuo. This blood spear contains the memories of the ancestors. This ancestor was an existence that comprehended the power of the spear. You can send your thoughts into the blood spear. Perhaps there will be some useful experience for you, the sacred leader said. Nodding, Zhuowen no longer hesitated. He turned his thoughts into needle-like shapes and drilled them into the blood spear. Boom! The moment Zhuowen's mind entered the blood-red spear, an extremely terrifying spear force burst out from the blood-red spear. Immediately, countless blood-red spear shadows fell from the sky like a blood-red waterfall, sealing Zhuowen and the blood-red spear within. The sacred leader slowly took a few steps back. Looking at the countless blood spear shadows in front of him, his gaze was extremely serious. He muttered in a low voice, "What a terrifying spear power. I wonder if Protector Zhuo can comprehend the true power of the spear from it. Fine. I'll stay here for a year. After a year, I'll go out to take charge of dealing with the demonic creatures. I hope you won't disappoint me, Enforcer Zhuo." As the Holy Lord spoke, he sat down cross-legged not too far away from Zhuowen. His eyes quietly stared at Zhuowen within the blood-red spear shadow. If anything happened to Zhuowen, he would immediately move to stop him. There were only 2 years left before the demonic creatures broke the seal, so he could only stay here for a year. A year later, he would gather all the human powerhouses in Shenzhen and prepare to resist the incoming demonic army. This was a land of blood. As far as the eye could see, it was filled with the color of blood. Above the land of blood, there was a pitter-patter of rain. This rain was blood. This world was a world of blood. Everything in sight was filled with the color of blood, and the air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Walls that were several dozen meters tall surrounded the bloody soil. The walls were blood-red and covered in strange, blood-red inscriptions. They were filled with a strange power. On top of the high walls was a ring-shaped seating platform. Its shape was very similar to the Colosseum of ancient Rome. On the platform sat many tall and ferocious creatures. These creatures were not humans. They had pitch-black scales and sharp horns on their foreheads. They were 3 meters tall and had blood-red eyes. These ferocious creatures opened their blood-red eyes and looked down at Zhuowen, who was below the high walls. To be more precise, they were not looking at Zhuowen, but at the area behind Zhuowen. Turning around, Zhuowen looked behind him. There were iron fences, and within the iron fences was a dark iron prison. In Zhuowen's eyes, these iron fences imprisoned humans in tattered clothes. There were men and women, but most of these humans had dull eyes. It was as if they were numb and had no attachment to this world. Is this the past of the blood-red space from 10,000 years ago? Looking at the scene around him, Zhuowen quickly understood. These scenes should be the memories from 10,000 years ago in the blood sphere. Now, his consciousness was reading these memories that few people knew of from 10,000 years ago, as if he was watching a movie. The ferocious creatures on the platform on the high walls should be the extremely terrifying demonic creatures from 10,000 years ago. They enslaved humans, killed them, and even tortured them. They treated them like livestock. Looking at the apathetic humans behind the iron fence, as well as the demons laughing and cursing on the high wall, Zhuowen's heart suddenly couldn't help but burst into a monstrous rage. This rage was the sorrow and anger of seeing his own race being enslaved and slaughtered by another race. Zhuowen himself was a human, but now seeing his own race being treated like this by a group of monsters that were neither human nor ghost, how could he not be angry and indignant? Kill. 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 Human livestock, if you want to live, then kill each other at all cost. Ha ha. On the high walls, the demonic creature's hoarse and unpleasant voice sounded. Then, the iron fences were all opened. One by one, the numb humans slowly walked out of the iron fences. Clang, clang, clang. Weapons of different shapes and sizes fell from the sky and stabbed into the bloody ground. The humans who walked out of the iron fence stared at the weapons in front of the bloody ground in a daze. They were still motionless as if time had stopped. Don't kill. If the 20 of you don't kill, all of you will die. If you kill each other, the winner can live. Only one can live. Choose, either all of you die, or only one of you survives. The demonic creature's voice sounded again. It was like thunder, echoing in the sky above the bloody ground. Pitter patter patter. The blood rain fell again, and it was getting heavier and heavier. The entire space was dyed red. The 20 humans still didn't move. Their eyes were still numb, and they just let the blood rain fall on their bodies. Good. Since you don't kill, then I will kill all of you. The demonic creature's voice became angry. It was about to attack. Kill. However, just as the monster was about to attack, a shrill cry rang out. A young man sobbed as he rushed out from a corner. He pulled out an ordinary-looking spear from the bloody soil and charged towards another middle-aged man beside him. The middle-aged man was in a daze. He looked at the young man who was rushing toward him. He remained motionless and just looked at the young man quietly. Poochie. The long spear pierced through his chest. The middle-aged man took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, a peaceful smile appeared on his face. He looked at the young man and said, "Thank you. Do your best to live." With that, the middle-aged man fell to the ground. His breath gradually weakened, and he finally died. The young man was stunned. He held the long spear with both hands. A stream of blood flowed from the middle-aged man's body into the young man's hands. It was the first time he realized that blood could be so hot. However, his heart turned cold. Because of his cowardice and fear of death, he killed someone. Moreover, he killed an innocent person. Plop! The young man sat on the ground and cried hysterically. Accompanied by a rain of blood, his cries filled the entire arena. It was mournful and helpless. Good, good, good. You're a good man. Pick up the spear again and kill the other 18 people. Otherwise, it won't be just the 18 people who will die. You will die too. If you want to live, you have to kill the others. The countless demonic creatures on the high platform laughed as if the scene just now was very funny. To them, the human race killing each other was a comedy. A comedy that made them convulse with laughter. The young man looked up and stared at the countless demonic creatures on the high platform. He slowly stood up and stopped crying. A deep resentment grew in his eyes. It was all because of these demonic creatures. Otherwise, why would he and the others fall to this point? I can't die. I have to become stronger. Strong enough to kill these demonic creatures. Wiping the tears from the corner of his eyes, the young man gently put down the middle-aged man's body and pulled out the long spear. His eyes were filled with determination. He couldn't die. He had to become stronger. He had to make these demonic creatures pay the price. Poochie, Poochie. The young man's attacks became cold-blooded and ruthless. The sluggishness in his eyes was no longer there. It was replaced with indifference and resentment. He knew that the only thing he could do now was to kill these innocent people of his own race. After the young man killed the last person, he came to a corner and suddenly vomited. The sorrow and self-blame in his eyes became even more intense. Although his only choice was to kill, how could he feel good whenever he remembered that the people who died in his hands were his own race? Good job. Human, what's your name? To be able to raise the weapon in your hand and kill your own race, we demonic creatures agree with your shamelessness. Haha. A demonic creature asked loudly with a mocking tone. Planting the long spear on the ground, the young man's eyes became unprecedentedly determined. He did not answer the demonic creature's question. It doesn't matter if you don't answer. You did well today. You've survived. There's still a battle tomorrow. If you want to struggle at death's door, then continue to kill your fellow clansmen, and live on in their resentment. Ha ha! Countless demonic creatures roared with laughter. They looked at the young man as if they were looking at a joke. That's right, killing their own race was very funny to them. Time passed day by day. The young man appeared in the arena every day. Every time, he would be able to stand at the end and kill everyone else. The ordinary long spear in the young man's hand gradually turned blood-red and became a blood spear. The young man became more and more indifferent. His heart was like steel. No matter who his opponent was, he would kill them with a single spear. The only hope in his heart was to live on. He would live on just like that. On this day, the iron fence opened once again. The young man slowly walked out with a blood spear in his hand and a cold gaze in his eyes. Stepping on the bloody ground, the young man's eyes revealed a trace of astonishment. This was because he realized that there was only one person on the bloody ground today. Usually, there would be more than 10 people appearing at the same time. It was the first time that only one person had appeared today. When the young man raised his head and his gaze fell on the figure on the ground, his pupils shrank and his body trembled. It was a young girl. Although she was wearing a coarse short skirt made of animal skin and her hair was slightly disheveled, it still could not hide the girl's snow-white skin and delicate face. Shui Yao. Chapter 8:21. Shui Yao, Shui Yao. Shui Yao. Why is it you? The youth's cold gaze finally changed. It turned into disbelief, fear, and weakness. The girl in front of him was called Shui Yao. She was his childhood sweetheart and his little sister. The youth still could not forget that the little girl who liked to cry, stick to him, and call him big brother was standing in front of him at this moment. Moreover, she was standing on the opposite side of the arena. Big brother. Big brother. Shui Yao's watery eyes were filled with helplessness. At this moment, she coincidentally saw the youth kneeling on one knee with the blood spear in his hand. The youth's face gave her a familiar feeling. It was the gentle face of her big brother that she had looked up to many times in the past. The big brother who had always protected her was right in front of her eyes. Therefore, she unconsciously called out. Hearing this call, the youth's entire body trembled. The arm holding the blood spear violently trembled for the first time. He tightly bit his lower lip and roared, "Why? Why is it Shui Yarrow? Oh!" A shameless person who kills people like scything flax can actually feel pity for his little sister. Haha, this is the first time I've seen you show such an expression. The demon sitting at the front suddenly laughed. His laughter was very evil. As long as you kill this girl, you'll be free in the future. You won't have to fight in the arena every day to survive. As long as you kill this girl, you'll be free. Go, kill her. The demon patiently guided the youth. The mocking expression on his face became even more intense. The other demons also revealed expressions of interest. When they released the youth, they already knew that the youth's opponent today was his little sister. They really wanted to see if the youth who killed people like scything flax would pick up the blood spear blade in his hand and kill his little sister. Kill her! Kill her! On the high wall, all the demonic creatures stood up and roared. Their crimson eyes were fixed on the young man below. Shui Yarrow's delicate body trembled, especially when she saw the ferocious demons on the high wall. Her entire body went limp on the ground. Her beautiful eyes were filled with mist as she stared at the youth in front of her and said, "Big brother, I'm scared, I'm so scared." When he heard Shui Yarrow's trembling voice, the young man's entire body trembled while his breathing became hurried. Especially when he saw Shui Yarrow's helpless gaze, the young man felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He still remembered that whenever Shui Yarrow said that she was scared, she would always hug his arm. That way, she would feel at ease. At that time, he would always say, "Don't be afraid, I'll protect you." But now, he couldn't bring himself to say those words. He could only stare at his own hands, which were stained with the blood of his own kind. He had killed innocent people of his own kind. He had struggled at death's door for so long under the mockery of the demonic creatures. Did he still have the ability to protect Shui Yarrow? Do I still have the qualifications? Kill her, or both of you will die. You should know the rules of the Colosseum. The demonic creature's voice gradually turned cold, and strands of killing intent spread out from it. Why her? Couldn't it be someone else? Why her? The young man raised his head and roared in a slightly hysterical manner. Why did these demonic creatures choose Shui Yarrow? Why did they choose the little sister that he had sworn to protect? Why her? Because we did it on purpose. Haha, we did it on purpose. Your fate is in our hands, and you have to kill whoever we tell you to kill. You're just a chess piece for us to amuse ourselves. The indistinct demonic creature suddenly roared with laughter, and its voice was piercing and merciless. After that, it suddenly turned cold and said, "If I tell you to kill her, then you have to kill her. If you don't, then all of you can die. Kill her. Kill her, and you'll be truly free." The demonic creature continued to tempt him. They needed an even more exciting performance. The young man's repeated victories in the Colosseum had made the demonic creatures sick of watching him, so they needed an even more exciting performance. So, they had specially investigated the young man's background and found the young woman, Shui Yarrow, whom the young man had relied on since he was young. She was the existence that the young man was determined to protect. They really wanted to see what sort of expression the young man would have when he killed the little sister that he was determined to protect. They wanted to see the young man in pain and humiliation, and they wanted to see the young man go mad. Perhaps that would be the only way to stimulate them. At this moment, Shui Yarrow had gradually recovered her calm. Especially when she saw the young man kneeling on the ground with a face covered in pain, Shui Yarrow's heart suddenly ached for him. Shui Yarrow slowly walked over to the young man's side. At this moment, she seemed to have forgotten her fear. She squatted down and cupped the young man's face while a gentle smile appeared on the corners of her mouth. "Big brother, you've always protected me in the past. Shui Yarrow wants to protect you this time as well. This is the first time that I've seen you reveal such fear. Don't be afraid." Shui Yarrow's smile grew brighter and brighter. Her icy cold hand gently stroked the young man's face while the gentleness in her beautiful eyes was like water that was about to drip down. The young man raised his head and gazed at the young woman who was smiling gently. His heart was trembling, and then he slowly calmed down and said, "Shueyao. Big brother said that I would always protect you, so I'll always protect you." The young man smiled as well. Right, why did I work so hard to survive? Now, he finally understood. He was worried about the young woman before him, and he wanted to see her smile once more. Now that he had seen it, he could die with no regrets. If he could only live alone, he would of course choose Shueyao. He had said that he would protect her. As he spoke, the young man slowly stood up and gently pulled out the blood-red spear. The sharp tip of the spear slowly approached his neck while his gaze was fixed on the young woman in front of him. He wanted to see the young woman's face more in his final moments. He wanted to remember the young woman's face forever. Slash. The sound of the spear piercing into flesh slowly rang out. Fresh blood dripped onto the bloody ground. At this moment, it seemed to have become tender and beautiful. The young man was stunned. His right hand was tightly held by a pair of small, fair hands. The blood-red spear had not pierced his neck but had instead pierced through Shueyao's abdomen. Just as the young man was about to die, Shueyao suddenly grabbed his right hand and leaned her delicate body towards the tip of the blood-red spear. In the end, the blood-red spear pierced through Shueyao's body. The young man, who was used to seeing blood, stared blankly at the blood flowing out of Shueyao's body. The blood flowed along the spear and stained the young man's right hand. Looking at this scene, the young man could not help but think of the middle-aged man he had killed for the first time. That middle-aged man's blood had stained his hands for the first time. Today, the blood of the little sister he had always wanted to protect had also stained his hands. Big brother. Finally, I'm no longer the one being protected. I've also protected you. Am I very powerful? Shueyao held the blood-red spear. Her pretty face was devoid of color as she smiled at the young man with a tranquil and satisfied expression. Following the long spear, Shueyao slowly walked towards the young man. A pool of blood had already gathered beneath her feet. At this moment, it was a poignant sight. Finally, Shueyao stopped in front of the young man. Her blood-stained right hand gently pulled the young man into her embrace. She smiled softly and said, "Big brother, live well." Then, the young man realized that Shueyao's body was gradually turning cold. The weak breathing by his ear had also completely stopped at this moment. "Live well," the young man softly murmured. His hands also hugged Shueyao's delicate body. 2 streams of blood flowed from his eyes. "Live well. Live well." The young man continuously repeated this sentence. The grief on his face became even more intense. "Haha. Well done, this is truly a tragedy for the human race. You've done well. We're very happy. You don't have to fight in the arena anymore. You're free now. Haha." On the high platform, all the demonic creatures stood up and cheered and jumped for joy. They had not expected the scene just now. They had not expected that the timid young girl, Shueyao, would choose to end her life in such a way. However, it was precisely because they had not expected this that it gave the demonic creatures a great surprise. They were very satisfied and very happy that the young man had obtained his freedom. The young man gently laid Shueyao flat on the ground. He looked up at the demonic creatures who were roaring with laughter on the high platform. He just watched quietly. At the same time, a blood-red energy surged out from the young man's body and surrounded him. "Freedom? You said you'll set me free?" The young man's lips suddenly curled into a mocking smile. Instantly, the blood-red energy became more and more intense. The blood-red energy adhered to the young man's body and turned into a blood-red armor. Rumble. The huge bloody earth in the arena suddenly trembled. Then, the blood that had accumulated in the bloody earth for many years swept out and turned into a monstrous sea of blood that surrounded the young man's body. "Is that the power of the blood spear?" Zhuoan, who had been watching from the side, could not help but exclaim when he saw the terrifying power that erupted from the young man's heart due to his grief and indignation. The demonic creatures' laughter gradually stopped. They looked down at the young man in the sea of blood with shock in their eyes. "How dare you? What are you trying to do? Don't tell me that you dare to break the rules of the arena and attack us." The leading demonic creature's eyes were cold as he shouted loudly, "Die! All of you deserve to die." The young man shouted. He stomped his foot and waved the blood spear in his hand. A boundless sea of blood gushed out and immediately engulfed the demon that had just spoken. With a miserable scream, the demon exploded into a cloud of blood mist in the sea of blood. It couldn't be more dead than this. What's going on? How did this young man suddenly become so terrifying? Seeing the demonic creature that had been killed in an instant, the other demonic creatures gasped and got up to leave the arena. All of you, stay here and die. The young man roared angrily at the sky. The boundless sea of blood filled every corner of the arena. The demonic creatures on the high platform all exploded into a bloody mist in the sea of blood. They did not have the strength to resist at all. In an instant, the huge arena was empty. Only the young man was left standing in the middle of the arena. Deng deng deng. The young man came to Shui Yao's side and gently caressed her cheek. A smile appeared on his face as he said, "It's all my fault for realizing it too late. Shui Yao, I'm sorry. I'll always be by your side." Chapter 8:22. 3 years past. Zhuowen stood quietly on the bloody soil as the endless sea of blood swept through. He looked at the two figures hugging each other tightly with a trace of sorrow in his eyes. The person he loved and wanted to protect the most had died in front of him. How sorrowful was that? Although Zhuowen could not understand the sorrow in the youth's heart, he could not help but be moved by this scene. These were the memories of the blood spear. Zhuowen also knew that the youth was probably the owner of the blood spear. It was just that the blood spear had presented this memory from 10,000 years ago to him. After Shui Yao's death, the owner of the blood spear, which was the young man, finally comprehended the blood spear aura after feeling extreme sorrow. The blood spear aura was very terrifying, as it mobilized the countless amounts of blood qi within the blood soil. Under this power, the demonic creatures were completely powerless to resist. The depth of love, the depth of sorrow. In extreme sorrow, he comprehended the Azura blood spear force. "This is my master's force. Do you understand?" A deep voice sounded as a figure walked out from the endless sea of blood. This figure had the appearance of the youth from before. The youth's eyes were scarlet red with a trace of sorrow. "You are that youth. You're not dead." Zhuowen looked at the youth in front of him and asked hesitantly. The youth shook his head and said, "My master sank into the sea of blood with his lover 10,000 years ago. I am the blood spear's spear spirit. I really didn't expect that an ordinary spear would grow into a spear spirit in the midst of endless slaughter. This spear has probably reached the power of a heavenly soul treasure." Xiao Hei's voice sounded in Zhuowen's mind. There was a trace of ridicule in her voice. Zhuowen nodded, and there was a trace of admiration in his eyes. That youth from 10,000 years ago was indeed extraordinary. He was originally an ordinary youth without any cultivation, but he constantly grew through slaughter, and in the end, he even comprehended one of the grand forces of the world, the Azura blood spear. The spear spirit glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and said, "Previously, Lord Shengzon has already told me about you. You are indeed a genius at using the spear. Moreover, there seems to be a very powerful monster in the green coffin behind you. It actually absorbed the resentment I released. However, it is not that easy for you to comprehend the spear force. You have never experienced the extreme sorrow that my master experienced. It will be very difficult for you to comprehend the Azura blood spear force." The spear spirit shook his head as he said this. He did not seem to be optimistic about Zhuowen. Zhuowen also understood the spear spirit's words. The Azura blood spear force indeed required one to experience extremely tragic events before they could finally comprehend it. However, Zhuowen did not have such an experience. It was indeed very difficult for him to comprehend this spear force. "You showed me that memory just now. I'm afraid it was not for no reason, right?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. He did not believe that the memory that the spear spirit showed him was without any intention. That was why he asked this question. "You are very smart. I deliberately showed you that memory. In 10,000 years, you are the first existence to comprehend the spear essence to the peak. If you want to further comprehend the spear force, you undoubtedly have an excellent foundation. Moreover, the demonic creatures are about to invade this world. You must comprehend the Azura blood spear force. This is the true nemesis of the demonic creatures. It is even stronger than the Lord's light force. Zhuowen stepped forward and cupped his hands. Then what do I need to do to comprehend the Azura blood spear force? You have to experience everything that my master once went through. Enter my master's memory and experience his past experiences and spiritual journey. The spear spirit stared at Zhuowen. Suddenly, he stomped his foot and turned into a bloody shadow. He entered the space between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Then, Zhuowen only saw darkness in front of him. When he slowly opened his eyes, he discovered that he was in a pitch-black prison. Looking at the iron bars of the cage, Zhuowen discovered that beyond the iron bars was the blood arena. It was the same blood arena that he had just been through. He also found that his clothes had changed. He was only wearing animal skin shorts. His whole body was dirty and he looked quite miserable. My body has become that young man. Looking at his clothes, Zhuowen found that he was the young man with the blood spear. Had he become that young man with the blood spear? Kill. 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 Human animals, if you want to live, then kill each other at all cost. Ha ha. The monster's voice suddenly sounded. Then, the iron fence in front of Zhuowen was opened, and his body walked out without listening to the monster's instructions. He looked around helplessly. Zhuowen's eyes showed a hint of understanding. At first, he was watching everything that happened in the arena as a bystander. But now, the spear spirit had connected his sight with the young man's. The young man's sight also became Zhuowen's sight. At this moment, Zhuowen could not control his body at all. His eyes could only follow the young man constantly. He could even feel the young man's anxiety and uneasiness. Clang, clang, clang. Weapons of various shapes and sizes fell from the sky and stabbed into the ground. Looking at the weapons in front of him, the young man was shocked. Zhuowen could feel the fear in the young man's body. This emotion made him a little nervous. Don't kill. If the 20 of you don't kill, all of you will die. If you kill each other, the winner can live. Only one person can live. Choose, either all of you die or only one person lives. The demon's voice sounded again. It was like thunder, echoing in the sky above the bloody ground. Pitter patter patter. The bloody rain fell again, and it was getting heavier and heavier. The entire space was dyed red with blood. The young man trembled all over. Looking at the demons on the high wall, his heart was filled with fear. Good. Since you don't kill, I will kill all of you. The demon's voice became a little angry. It was about to attack. Hearing the demon's words, the young man trembled all over. A beautiful figure appeared in his mind. It was Shui Yarrow, his sister. He said that he would protect her. He could not die. Kill. The young man whimpered as he pulled out a long spear and stabbed it at the nearest middle-aged man. Blood splattered out. The blood that gushed out stained his hands and cheeks. In Zhuowen's perception, it was so real. He even saw the middle-aged man's smile of relief. Suddenly, a sense of guilt rose in his heart. Just like that, Zhuowen experienced everything that the young man had gone through from the young man's perspective. It was a sad time. The young man's heart was filled with self-blame, guilt, and the desire to kill. These various negative emotions almost drove the young man crazy. However, every time he thought of Shui Yarrow's figure, the young man would grit his teeth and endure it. His belief that he could not die became even stronger. In the blood-red space, the sacred lord slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the figure in front of him who was enveloped by the blood-red spear and sighed. Protector Zhuo, there's only 1 year left. I hope that you can really comprehend spear force in this last year. With that, the sacred lord got up and left the space. There was only 1 year left. What he needed to do was not to continue waiting for Zhuowen to wake up. Instead, he needed to work on how to gather the strong humans to resist the invasion of the demonic creatures a year later. After returning to the Sacred Lord Mountain, the Sacred Lord no longer concealed the news of the demonic creatures' invasion. Instead, he instructed the elders to spread the news throughout Shenzhen. In an instant, all the disciples and elders of Shenzhen knew of this important news. Because of this news, Shenzhen fell into chaos. Fortunately, the Sacred Lord had some means and calmed the chaos down. After the chaos subsided, many of the disciples and elders of Shenzhen knew of the seriousness of the demonic creature's invasion. Therefore, under the command of the Sacred Lord, the Protectors, and the 10 Great Elders, they began to prepare in an orderly manner. At the same time, Shenzhen sent out many teams to various cities in preparation to gather the strong people of the cities to Shenzhen to resist the demonic creatures that were about to arrive. The strong people of the cities did not refuse. They knew that Shenzhen was the final barrier against the demonic creatures. If Shenzhen collapsed, then their cities would cease to exist. Countless strong people scattered all over the place descended on Shenzhen. In an instant, the originally powerful Shenzhen became even more powerful due to the addition of these strong people from all over the place. The Sacred Lord and some formation masters also set up an extremely powerful defensive formation in the mountain range where Shenzhen was located. Time passed by minute, and the atmosphere in Shenzhen became more and more solemn. This was because as time passed, the demonic creatures were getting closer and closer to them. 3 years had passed. On a cold morning, the Sacred Lord, the left and right protectors, and the 10 Great Elders stood on the peak of the Sacred Lord mountain. They silently stared at an abyss that was a few thousand meters away from Shenzhen. On the surface of the abyss, there was a golden barrier. However, at this moment, the golden barrier had become increasingly dim, and it looked like it would shatter at any moment. This golden barrier was left behind by the Kang dragon Taoist 10,000 years ago to suppress the demonic creatures that were hiding in the abyss. The golden barrier was indeed powerful, but unfortunately, it had been there for too long. 10,000 years had caused the seal to become even more fragile, like a candle in the wind. Although the Holy Lord wanted to repair this seal that had been left behind for 10,000 years, unfortunately, the principles of this seal were far too complex. Even the array formation grandmasters of the Holy Lord couldn't understand it, let alone repair it. This was also why the Holy Lord had decided to fight to the death. Today was the last day of the 3-year deadline. The seal could not hold on for much longer, and the demonic creatures would soon break out of the seal. It looks like Protector Zhuo was unable to comprehend the spear force in the last year. It looks like we can only rely on us. Zhuoan did not come out today. The Sacred Lord knew that Zhuoan had not succeeded in comprehending the spear force, and the disappointment in his heart was imaginable. Lord Sacred Lord, you even spent a lot of effort to help Zhuoan. In the end, that kid did not even comprehend the force of heaven and earth. He is simply a piece of trash. The left and right protectors' faces were somewhat ugly. Zhuoan had not come out yet, and they knew that it was basically impossible to rely on Zhuoan. They could not help but curse. Chapter 8:23. The demonic creatures break the seal rumble. The earth quaked and the mountains shook, spreading throughout Shenzhen. Countless dark and terrifying figures surged out of the abyss and crashed into the golden barrier without any fear of death. These figures were covered in black scales and were more than 3 feet tall with horns on their heads. Weren't they the demonic creatures that Zhuoan had seen in Bloodspear's memories? The demonic creatures are coming out. Everyone, be careful. Take charge of the formations of your respective peaks. The holy leader's eyes narrowed as his loud voice spread throughout Shenzhen. The disciples and elders of Shenzhen on the other peaks, as well as the experts from the other cities who had rushed over, became nervous. Almost all the humans in this world knew about the demonic creatures from 10,000 years ago. They also knew how terrifying and powerful the demonic creatures were. Facing such a demonic creature today naturally made many people uneasy. Activate the 4 peaks formation. We can't let these demonic creatures break through Shenzhen's defenses. Otherwise, the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. The holy leader roared as his hands quickly formed a seal. The left and right protectors and the 10 great elders behind him formed their own seals as well. Suddenly, a beam of light surged out of the holy leader peak and shot into the sky. The moment the holy leader peak's beam of light shot into the sky, the other disciple peaks, elder peaks, and trial peaks also shot into the sky. The 4 pillars of light were like pillars that pierced through the sky, breaking through the clouds. When the pillars of light reached the peak of the sky, they all exploded into countless brilliant lights, like fireworks, blooming magnificently in the sky. Countless rays of light fell from the sky like a meteor shower and finally surrounded the 4 peaks, forming 4 layers of light fences. Crack! The moment the 4 peaks formation was activated, the golden barrier above the abyss finally shattered under the attacks of countless demonic creatures. Then, countless demonic creatures surged into the sky like a swarm of locusts. We're out. We're finally out. After 10,000 years, the Moro tribe can finally see the light of day. Haha. I haven't eaten human flesh for so long that I've almost forgotten the taste of human flesh. Now that we're out, we must feast. Yes. You want to enslave humans and make them our entertainment. Haha, the abyss is far too boring. I'm going to have some fun this time. Ghostly wails and howls reverberated in the air above the abyss. These demonic creatures had been cooped up underground for too long. Now that they were able to come out, they would definitely wreak havoc on the surface. So many demons. Why are there so many? Within the Glory sect, many of the Glory sect disciples turned pale when they saw the demonic creatures breaking out of the seal. There were just too many demonic creatures coming out of the abyss. It was as if there was no end to them, covering the entire sky. Moreover, there was still a steady stream of demonic creatures rushing out of the abyss, and the number was still increasing. Human. There are so many humans. Let's go and capture them alive. Haha. After walking out of the abyss, the monster floating in mid-air quickly noticed Shengzon in front of it. Its crimson eyes emitted a bloodthirsty glow. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Like a swarm of locusts, the demonic creatures rushed toward Shengzon, causing many people in Shengzon to tremble in fear. Everyone, don't be afraid. As long as the 4 peaks formation is maintained, these demonic creatures will not cause any harm to you. The Holy Lord's voice resounded in everyone's minds, causing many people to calm down inexplicably. Then, they methodically maintained the formation of their respective peaks. Boom boom boom. Countless demonic creatures blasted onto the outermost light fence of Shengzon without mercy. Suddenly, the charging figures stopped abruptly in their tracks, and some even retreated pathetically. They actually have such a powerful formation? It seems that this group of humans is quite capable. Some of the demonic creatures at the front were basically blocked by the 4 peaks formation. Seeing this scene, the people in the peaks heaved a sigh of relief. After seeing so many demonic creatures coming out, they were not confident in the 4 peaks formation. Now, it seemed that their worries were unnecessary. Bang bang bang. The demonic creatures that were blocked outside roared angrily. Some of them refused to believe it and blasted the light fence over and over again, causing the 4 peaks formation to shake violently. These demonic creatures have strong physical bodies. Looking at the demonic creatures that were constantly smashing their bodies against the 4 peaks formation, the people in the 4 peaks formation were shocked. These demonic creatures were crazy. A cold snort sounded. The Sacred Master on the Sacred Master Mountain took a step forward and soared into the sky. Like a blazing sun, a light burst forth. He had actually used the Great Light Force. At this moment, the holy light filled the entire 4 peaks formation and covered the surface of the formation. Ah! 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 The moment the Sacred Lord unleashed the light force, the demonic creatures closest to the array shrieked miserably. Then, they were completely annihilated by the light force. Light force. Damn it, a human has actually comprehended the light force of heaven and earth. After seeing the first batch of demonic creatures disappear, the next batch of demonic creatures stopped in mid-air. They did not dare to move forward. Instead, they stared fearfully at the dazzling light on the 4 peaks formation. The grand momentum of heaven and earth was extremely effective against the Moro tribe. The grand momentum of light was a kind of grand momentum of heaven and earth. Although it wasn't a particularly powerful momentum, it was a piece of cake for it to deal with small fries like them. Retreat. This great momentum of light isn't something we can resist. The demonic creatures at the back screamed and quickly retreated. They wanted to avoid the power of the light force. Unfortunately, the speed of the light force was too fast. It was so fast that the demonic creatures despaired. Another series of miserable shrieks rang out, and the group of demonic creatures behind them were also annihilated into ashes by the power of the momentum of light. In just a moment, a quarter of the demonic creatures that rushed out of the abyss were annihilated by the light force. The remaining demonic creatures did not dare to approach Shengzon. They stared from afar, their faces full of fear. "Long live the Holy Lord! It looks like we're going to win this time. These demonic creatures aren't much. Under the Holy Lord's power, they can't even withstand a single blow. Yes, with the Holy Lord here. So what if these demonic creatures break the seal? Aren't they still living targets?" Many people in Shengzon cheered. The Holy Lord's action of annihilating 1/5 of the demonic creatures in an instant was a great encouragement to them. However, the Holy Lord was not the least bit excited. Instead, he frowned. As the master of Shengzon, he knew more about the demonic creatures than the average person. He knew very well that these demonic creatures were just small fries. The true powerhouses of the Moro tribe had yet to appear. Rumble. Suddenly, an even more violent tremor spread from the abyss. Then, countless black mist gushed out of the abyss like a hurricane. A demonic figure that was thousands of feet tall stepped out from the abyss. This was a true demonic body. The figure was thousands of feet tall and almost covered the sky. It stood in the air above the abyss and was even taller than the four peaks. "King, you're finally here. Please lead us to conquer these humans." The remaining demonic creatures all knelt on the ground and bowed to the Demon King who had just appeared. A gust of wind blew, and the Demon King's black cloak fluttered in the wind. His eyes were almost completely black, making him look exceptionally eerie. His gaze focused on the Four Peaks formation in front of him. Then, he looked down and saw the Holy Lord standing on the Holy Lord's peak. "It looks like you humans have been developing well for the past 10,000 years. You've actually been able to produce so many humans. Very well, the Moro tribe will gladly accept such a large number of slaves." As he spoke, the Demon King took a step forward and crossed 1,000 miles in a single step. He arrived in front of the Four Peaks formation. He stretched out his right hand and a black spear formed in his palm. Boom! The Demon King did not hold back at all. The black spear was like an arrow that left the bow, slamming heavily onto the Four Peaks Grand Array. Then, a violent tremor rang out. Everyone was shocked to discover that the surface of the Four Peaks Grand Array had actually started to crack. "Light!" The Holy Lord roared angrily and turned into a beam of light that shot toward the Demon King. An intense light rushed toward the Demon King like a tsunami, wanting to completely destroy the Demon King under the power of the grand momentum of light. Grand momentum of light. It looks like you're quite talented to be able to comprehend the grand momentum of light. Unfortunately, the grand momentum of light's energy level is too low. It's completely ineffective against me. The Demon King's voice was cold and indifferent. He waved his right hand and the black spear whistled as it slammed into the boundless sea of light. Instantly, the sea of light was shattered by the black spear. "Your formation will also be broken by me. You humans will become slaves again, and the Moro tribe will become the true masters of this world." The sea of light shattered. The Demon King no longer held back. He swung his black spear and an endless demonic aura swept out. The black spear expanded several times in size and its power became extremely terrifying. "Break for me." With a loud roar, the black spear once again slammed into the Four Peaks formation. With a cracking sound, the cracks on the Four Peaks formation's surface grew larger and larger. Finally, the formation spread and shattered. The formation has been broken. "Children, go. Kill to your heart's content and kill all of these humans." The Demon King roared and took a huge step forward, directly heading toward the Holy Lord. He knew that the Holy Lord was the leader of the human race. If he killed the Holy Lord, the human race would lose its pillar of support and be more easily controlled by the Moro tribe. Therefore, the Holy Lord had to die. Kill. This damned formation has finally been broken. Let's go and have a taste of human flesh. Countless demonic creatures behind the Demon King released a bloodthirsty and greedy light from their eyes. They turned into shadows and rushed toward the Four Peaks of Shengzon, killing any human they saw. Instantly, The experts of Shenzhen and the demonic creatures collided. For a moment, the battle was difficult to end. Chapter 8:24. Demon King. The overwhelming number of demonic creatures was like a dark cloud. As they descended, the sky above Glory Sect was dyed in a terrifying pitch-black color. The Disciples' Peak, Elders' Peak, and Trial Peak had the most cultivators. They raised their heads and looked at the sky full of demonic creatures with a trace of fear in their eyes. Those who are not of our race will be killed no matter how far away they are. We humans can no longer be slaves to these demonic creatures like we were 10,000 years ago. The sacred leader roared. Blazing light burst out from his body and turned into thousands of light rays that shot into the bodies of the other martial artists on the peak. Their bodies lit up with dazzling light as well. Light force. The sacred leader has used his own light force on us. We don't have to be afraid of these demonic creatures. Kill. We humans will not relive the dark era from 10,000 years ago. This era should be led by us humans. After the light force was used on them, everyone in Shenzhen roared and charged at the demonic creatures in the sky without any regard for their own safety. After all, the light force was the force of heaven and earth. Although there was only a trace of it, it was still extremely powerful in restraining the demonic creatures. Many of the Sage Sect warriors, who had been suppressed, now had a tendency to counterattack. You're giving your light force to other humans? How foolish. The Demon King stood quietly in front of the sacred leader's peak. He looked indifferently at everything that was happening around him with a mocking smile. The sacred leader's actions were obviously foolish. By giving away his light force, the sacred leader's strength would drop significantly. How would he be able to fight against the Demon King then? Don't worry. Left and right guardians, form the 10-direction soul-killing array and support me. The sacred leader's face was slightly pale. He whispered to the left and right guardians behind him. Golden light burst out from his body as he charged at the Demon King. The left and right protectors nodded. They also knew the urgency of the situation, so they hurriedly commanded the 10 elders to transform into 10 streaks of light and stand in 10 different directions around the Demon King. They formed hand seals and used the 10-directional soul slaughter formation that had trapped Shuo Wen before. At the same time, the left and right guardians were not to be outdone. The two of them stood above the 10-direction soul-killing array. Countless amounts of energy converged to form a constantly rotating red and blue disk. A bunch of trash dares to stop this king. The Devil King snorted coldly. His huge body moved and turned into a dark shadow. He swung the huge black spear in his hand. With endless devil aura, the spear blasted on the Shifang soul-killing formation with a loud explosion. Catcher. In an instant, the terrifyingly powerful 10-direction soul-killing formation actually collapsed completely. They also charged toward the Demon King from afar like moths to a flame. You have a death wish. The Demon King was a little impatient. With a wave of his spear, a terrifying spear chi spread across half the sky. Under this terrifying spear chi, the 10 great elders exploded into clouds of blood mist. They couldn't be more dead. The left and right protectors and the 10 great elders are all dead. The rest of the warriors who were fighting in Shenzhen turned pale with fright when they saw this scene. In Shenzhen, the left and right protectors and the 10 great elders, whose strength was second only to the sacred leader, had died in front of them. Furthermore, the sacred leader had been severely injured by the Demon King and looked dispirited. This scene caused many people in Shenzhen to feel despair. They knew that if the sacred leader was no match for the Demon King, then the human clan would truly be finished. Just a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs. The Demon King laughed complacently. He stomped his foot and instantly appeared above the sacred leader. He waved his right hand, intending to capture the sacred leader alive. Light. The sacred leader had become extremely weak at this moment, especially when he saw the left and right protectors and the 10 great elders die in front of him. His eyes were filled with grief and indignation. Even if he was severely injured, he still intended to fight the Demon King to the death. You're already an arrow at the end of its flight. You still dare to oppose me. You really don't know what death is. The Demon King sneered. Countless demonic chi gushed out of his right hand and instantly annihilated the sacred leader's light. The demonic chi rolled and enveloped the sacred leader, turning him into a black cage. Holding the black cage, the demon king looked down at the other warriors in Shenzhen and laughed. Even your human clan's leader has been captured by me. Why don't you all surrender? The sacred leader was too weak at this moment. The light that was supporting the warriors in Shenzhen suddenly disappeared. Without the support of the light, the warriors in Shenzhen were immediately suppressed by the demonic creatures. After a while, they were all defeated. Some were captured alive, while others were killed mercilessly. Inside the black cage, the sacred leader seemed to have aged a lot. Seeing the warriors in Shenzhen being corroded by the demonic creatures, he knew that the human clan was finished. He was afraid that this world would really be controlled by the demonic creatures in the future, and the human clan would be enslaved by the demonic creatures again. Children, search to your heart's content. This Shenzhen is the ruler of the human clan. There must be a lot of good things inside. Don't be shy. Take everything you can. Also, if there are any disobedient humans, kill them. Don't be shy. The demon king held the black cage that trapped the sacred leader and looked down at the Shenzhen's environment. With a flick of his finger, countless black lights appeared and trapped all the warriors in the Shenzhen in the black cage. Thank you, my king, the demonic creatures shouted in unison. After controlling all the warriors in Shenzhen, they searched the Shenzhen unscrupulously. Most of the demonic creatures went to the sacred leader mountain. They all rushed into the main hall where the sacred leader lived and rummaged through it without hesitation. Inside the cage, the sacred leader looked at the demonic creature's behavior and his face turned ugly. However, he was helpless. He was now a prisoner. Although he wanted to stop them, he was powerless. The demonic creatures that entered the main hall had red eyes full of anticipation. After all, this was the residence of the human clan's leader. There must be a lot of good things inside. Hey! I smell the scent of humans inside. There seems to be humans in this main hall. A demonic creature with a large nose sniffed the air and muttered in a muffled voice. Then, the demonic creature looked around cautiously. When it found that its companions did not notice its abnormality, it tiptoed and followed the scent into the depths of the main hall. After turning through many rooms and corridors, the demonic creature finally arrived at the deepest part of the main hall. There was a dark cave that should lead to the underground. The scent of humans is the strongest here. It seems that the human should be underground. Hehe, then I won't be polite. This human is mine. The demonic creature laughed sinisterly and jumped into the cave. After reaching the bottom, the demonic creature cautiously looked around and found that there was a wide blood-red space in front of it. In the center of the blood-red space, a blood spear was quietly inserted into the blood-red ground. Beside the blood spear, a young man sat cross-legged with his eyes closed, as if he was comprehending something. I didn't expect that there would be a human hiding in this secret place. Hee. The demonic creature stared at the young man in the blood-red space with blazing eyes. With a step, it turned into a shadow and rushed toward the young man. Just as the demonic creature's ferocious claws were inches away from the young man suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, his eyes had become incomparably blood-red and looked very demonic. A line of blood tears flowed down from the young man's eyes. Then, a terrifying blood-red aura burst out from the young man's body. In an instant, the young man's body turned into a terrifying sea of blood. The demonic creature was instantly engulfed by the sea of blood. Without even a groan, it exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Sacrifice for a righteous cause, bathed in blood and transformed into an Azura. Is this the power of the Azura blood spear? Chapter 825. Sacrificing oneself for a righteous cause, transforming into Azura. Countless seas of blood were like hurricanes as they swept across the sky behind Zhuoan. Zhuoan was like a hellish Azura standing below the sea of blood. Over the past 2 years, Zhuoan had been using the identity of that youth to replay the tragic events that had happened back then. He felt the grief and indignation in that youth's heart, as well as the unwillingness of having his life and death controlled by someone else. At that moment, Zhuowen could even feel that he was no longer himself, but that youth. In the end, when the youth saw Shui Yarrow die in front of him, his heart trembled. Zhuowen's heart trembled. It was also at this moment that tears of blood flowed out from his eyes. He had truly comprehended the Azura blood spear that the youth had comprehended. Furthermore, in these 2 years, Zhuowen's cultivation had also been constantly growing and transforming. He had risen from the initial stage of the Xuanzuan realm to the peak of the Xuanzuan realm, sacrificing oneself for a righteous cause, transforming into Azura. Zhuowen murmured in a low voice as he stomped his foot. Countless seas of blood surged, and immediately, the entire blood-red space began to collapse under the raging seas of blood. Just now, a demonic creature actually broke into this place. It looks like the 3 years are up. Have those demonic creatures already invaded Shenzhen? With that, Zhuowen shot towards the ground with the sea of blood and the blood spear in his hand. His speed soared to the limit. At this moment, an atmosphere of despair gradually spread throughout Shenzhen. All the cultivators of Shenzhen had basically been trapped in a black cage by the Demon King. Even the Holy Lord could not escape this fate. In particular, the disciples and elders of Shenzhen were filled with indignation when they saw those ugly demonic creatures constantly destroying and desecrating the 4 peaks of Shenzhen. After all, Shenzhen was the holy land of martial arts in their hearts. Now, not only had it been taken down by the demonic creatures, but it had also been ruined by them. How could they be happy? In the black cage, a young woman looked at the demonic creatures that were wreaking havoc in Shenzhen with a complicated gaze. She gritted her teeth and her body trembled. This woman was Yarrow Zueling, the one who had brought Zhuowen to the training peak. At this moment, Yarrow Zueling's beautiful eyes were filled with sorrow. She had lived with her elder brother in Shenzhen since she was young. It could be said that Shenzhen was her home. But now, her sacred home was ruined by these ugly monsters. Yarrow Zueling felt extremely uncomfortable. Are we, the human race, really going to become the slaves of these demonic creatures like 10,000 years ago? A hand gently patted Yarrow Zueling's shoulder. The dispirited Yarrow Yang came to Yarrow Zueling's side and sighed softly. That Demon King is too strong. Even the Holy Master is no match for it. I'm afraid that we, the human race, will not be able to escape the fate of being enslaved. Yarrow Yang's face was gloomy and his eyes were lifeless. The despair in his heart was even greater than Yarrow Zueling's. After the Holy Master was defeated by the Demon King, he knew that the human race did not have much hope. Brother, do you think that Zhuowen can defeat that Demon King? Yarrow Zueling was very unwilling. She could not help but think of the unruly and arrogant young man from 3 years ago. That young man had once charged into Shenzhen alone and defeated the 10 great elders and the left and right protectors. Even the Holy Master regarded him with great importance and gave him the position of great protector. Zhuowen's strength had long been ingrained in Yarrow Zueling's heart. Yarrow Zueling did not know when, but the feeling that the young man would not be defeated had risen in her heart. Although this feeling was a little absurd, Yarrow Zueling did not know why, but she firmly believed in it. In her heart, the strong young man had left a deep impression on her. It was so deep that she believed that he would not be defeated. Yarrow Yang smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although Protector Zhuo is strong, I'm afraid that he is still weaker than the Holy Master. Even the Holy Master was no match for the Demon King. I'm afraid that Protector Zhuo will not be a match for him either. Furthermore, in these 3 years, Protector Zhuo has not appeared in Shenzhen. I'm afraid that he received the news in advance and fled. After all, because of the demonic seal, Shenzhen is not safe. Yarrow Zueling shook her head. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination as she said, "No, I believe that Protector Zhuo is not the kind of person who would shrink back." Looking at Yarrow Zueling's hopeful look, Yarrow Yang did not refute. He only shook his head. If he was Zhuowen, he would not get involved in this muddy water. After all, the gains would not make up for the losses. Just as everyone was at their most desperate, a violent tremor suddenly came from the bottom of the Holy Master Peak. Then, the Holy Master Peak, which had stood tall and upright, completely collapsed under everyone's shocked gazes. Ah! 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 Mournful screams rang out incessantly. The demonic creatures that had tried to enter the Holy Master Peak to search let out blood-curdling screams. Then, they mysteriously exploded into clouds of blood mist. What's going on? Why did the Holy Master Peak suddenly collapse? Everyone within Glory Sect looked at the collapsed Saint Master Peak with bewilderment. This was especially the case when they caught sight of the demonic creatures that had exploded into a bloody mist. Their bewilderment was even thicker. The Demon King narrowed his eyes. Naturally, he had also noticed the strange state of the Holy Master Peak. In contrast, the eyes of the Holy Master, who was trapped in the cage, flickered. Boom. 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 The moment the Holy Master Peak collapsed, a monstrous sea of blood gushed out from the bottom of the Holy Master Peak. It was endless and almost covered the sky above the Holy Master Peak. In the sea of blood, a tall and straight young man, holding a blood spear, stepped on the sea of blood and walked into the sky. Seeing the young man who had suddenly appeared, many people in Shenzhen were puzzled. They had never seen this young man in Shenzhen before. This is the Great Protector. 2 years ago, the Holy Master and the Great Protector went to the Holy Master Peak. I saw the Great Protector's face. It's him. What? He's actually our Shenzhen's Great Protector? It's said that the Great Protector is about 20 years old. Seeing him today, he's really young. The Great Protector is so young. I'm afraid he's not very strong. Coming out to face the Demon King now is simply courting death. Originally, Zhuowen's appearance had aroused many people's hope. However, after recognizing Zhuowen's identity, many people revealed looks of despair once again. Rumors about the Great Protector had been spread all over Shenzhen. Everyone guessed that the Great Protector was related to the Holy Master. That was why he had been given the position of Great Protector at such a young age. As for the rumor that Zhuowen had relied on his own strength to obtain the position of Great Protector, no one in Shenzhen believed it. Therefore, they didn't have much hope for Zhuowen. Their gazes were still apathetic. The one who had rushed out at this moment was naturally Zhuowen. Naturally, Zhuowen hadn't heard the comments of some people in Shenzhen. Even if he had heard them, he wouldn't have cared too much. I really didn't expect that there would be a fish that escaped the net in Shenzhen. Children, I'll leave this person to you. You can do whatever you want with him. The Demon King glanced indifferently at Zhuowen. He didn't care. After all, this human in front of him was too young. He probably wasn't very strong. Keek. Thank you for your reward, my king. As soon as the Demon King said this, the numerous demonic creatures behind him laughed eerily. Their red eyes were fixed on Zhuowen as if they were staring at a delicious meal. Kill this kid. I want to savor the taste of his flesh. Whoosh. Whoosh. Thousands of demonic creatures fought to be the first to pounce on Zhuowen with sharp cries. Every one of them spoke without the slightest scruple, as if Zhuowen was already in their pockets. You want to taste my flesh? Then you can have a try. Zhuowen was expressionless. He swung the blood spear in his hand. Countless blood seas shrouded the demonic creatures that were pouncing on him. Fart. Fart. Suddenly, the thousands of demonic creatures that were pouncing on him exploded into clouds of blood mist under the erosion of the blood seas. These clouds of blood mist were absorbed by the blood seas, making the power of the blood seas even more terrifying. What? Killing thousands of demonic creatures with a single spear? The Great Guardian is actually so strong. Looking at this scene, the Sage Sect martial artists who were originally in despair were all dumbfounded at this moment. Immediately, their eyes lit up again. Azura Blood Spear Force? The Demon King's voice was low. Its pitch-black eyes stared fixedly at the blood seas around Zhuowen. Its gaze became extremely serious. The moment Zhuowen used the blood seas, it recognized that the force of heaven and earth that Zhuowen had mastered was the Azura Blood Spear Force. The Azura Blood Spear Force was much more powerful than the Divine Lord's Force of Light. It was filled with killing intent. Even for demonic creatures that killed without batting an eye, the Azura Blood Spear Force was an extremely terrifying existence. 10,000 years ago, there was a human who comprehended this terrifying force of heaven and earth. He transformed into an Asura and slaughtered countless demonic creatures. If that human hadn't had the will to die, the demonic creatures would have suffered even greater losses. You are the king of demonic creatures. Zhuowen held the spear in his right hand. His eyes were blood red as he coldly stared at the demon king that was over 10,000 feet tall. Human. There is no benefit in opposing the Moro tribe. Submit to the Moro tribe and I will make you the king of Moro. Your status will be equal to mine. The demon king stared at Zhuowen with some apprehension. Its voice was low and hoarse. Didn't you want to enslave us humans? Why are you trying to recruit me now? Zhuowen sneered. In his heart, he gained a new understanding of the Asura blood spear force. Even the demon king was wary of this force of spear force. It seemed that it was indeed extraordinary. If I make you the king of humans, all humans will listen to you. You can even toy with them however you want. Don't you humans like the feeling of controlling the lives of others? The demon king said patiently. On the other hand, Zhuowen's expression became even colder. This demon king was indeed treating humans like livestock. He could even say such words in such a matter-of-fact manner. Right now, I'm only interested in your life. Kill. With that, Zhuowen stomped his foot. The blood spear in his hand swept through the blood sea and shot straight towards the demon king. Of course not. A lightning shadow flashed past. 100 meters away, Zhuowen stared at the demon king. He smiled and said, "Since you want to fight so much, I'll fight with you. Great Sun Nirvana Law." As he spoke, Zhuowen's entire body burst out in a golden radiance, transforming into 4 heads and 8 arms. His entire body was as dazzling as the blazing sun. At the same time, each of his 8 arms held 8 long spears that glinted with a cold light. I'd like to see if you can block the Asura blood spear with 8 times the power. With a shout, Zhuowen took a step forward. Instead of retreating, he rushed towards the demon king. The Asura blood spear's power erupted. An endless sea of blood gushed out and surrounded Zhuowen, forming 8 terrifying blood sea vortexes. What? How did this human spear power suddenly become so strong? Sensing the sudden change in Zhuowen's form and the sudden increase in power of the spear, the demon king was stunned. Maybe it's just a bluff. Watch me kill this kid. Demon beheading. The devil king narrowed his eyes and roared angrily. Endless demonic chi surged out and turned into a huge black blade that was several hundred feet long in his hand. On the black blade, a group of demons danced, wailed, and howled. It looked eerie and terrifying. Break for me. Zhuowen roared angrily. His 8 arms slammed down. The 8 Asura blood spear's power completely erupted. The blood-red vortex almost soared into the sky like a bridge connecting heaven and earth. It looked extremely spectacular. How terrifying. Looking at the huge blood-red vortex that spanned across heaven and earth, whether it was the warriors of Shenzhen or the surviving demons, they were all shocked. Their hearts trembled involuntarily because of this terrifying power. They couldn't imagine that a human could exert such terrifying power. Catcher. The black blade collided with the blood-red vortex, and its forward momentum came to an abrupt halt. Then, countless cracks appeared on its surface, and these cracks continued to spread. In the end, it was all shattered into countless black powder. The demon king was stunned. Countless demons were stunned. Even the warriors of Shenzhen were stunned. The demon king's all-out attack was easily broken when it collided with Zhuowen. Die for me. Once the black blade was broken, Zhuowen did not hesitate. The 8 spears slammed down on the demon king's head. A mournful scream sounded. The demon king's huge body was gradually being devoured by the blood-red vortex. It exploded into clouds of blood mist. The scream did not last long. Then, the demon king's huge body completely turned into a rain of blood in the blood-red vortex. The demon king of a generation was killed by a human. Everyone's eyes became numb. Under the rain of blood, the figure that was silently suspended in mid-air was forever imprinted in the depths of everyone's hearts. Perhaps many years later, this figure would not be forgotten. This was because what this figure did today shook the entire first layer of heaven and earth. He killed the demon king of a generation, saved the entire Shenzhen, and even the living beings of this world. At the same time, the black cages on the warriors of Shenzhen disappeared. These cages were formed by the demon king's demonic aura. Since the demon king was dead, it naturally could not exist. Brother, it's Zhuowen. He did it. He killed the demon king and saved us. Yarrow Zueling suddenly jumped up. Her beautiful eyes stared at Zhuowen's back. Her heart was beating like a fawn, and a rare blush appeared on her beautiful cheeks. Zhuowen was young, but his strength was also very strong. Now, he had suddenly risen to the top, killed the demon king, and saved the human race. Yarrow Zueling was at the age where she was yearning for love. How could she not be moved by such a young talent? Great Guardian! Great Guardian! After the shock, countless warriors of Shenzhen roared toward the sky. They were crazy and excited. They originally thought that they would die and be enslaved by the demonic creatures again. But now, Zhuowen appeared and killed the demon king. How could they not cheer? At this moment, everyone stared at the figure in awe. There was no longer any contempt in their hearts. There was only reverence and fanaticism. With the death of the demon king, the remaining demonic creatures were basically no longer a threat. They were wiped out one by the warriors of Shenzhen. Su. A light flashed and the sacred lord arrived in front of Zhuowen. He looked at the young man in front of him, his eyes filled with many indescribable emotions. There was excitement, complexity, and happiness. Guardian Zhuo, you have made a great contribution this time. On behalf of the human race, I would like to express my deep respect for you. The sacred lord bowed and said with great sincerity. Zhuowen helped the sacred lord up and smiled. I should be the one saying these words. If it weren't for the sacred lord bringing me to the land of the blood spear and helping me explain the general trend of the world, I, Zhuowen, would not have been able to comprehend the Azura blood spear's potential so quickly. The sacred lord firmly shook his head. That was only a support. It was all because of you, Guardian Zhuo. If your perception was not strong, you would not have been able to comprehend the spear's potential in such a short time. It was you who saved the human race and gave us a future. You are worthy of this, thank you. Seeing that the sacred lord was so determined, Zhuowen did not refuse, because he would soon be leaving the first layer of the world. After he killed the demon king, Taoist master Kang Long's words rang in his mind, successfully comprehend the general trend of the world and kill the demon king. Within 10 breaths, you will be teleported out of the first layer of the world. In other words, Zhuowen only had 10 breaths of time left. After 10 breaths, he would be teleported out of this world by Taoist master Kang Long Su Su. 2 more figures came to Zhuowen's side. They were Yarrow Zueling and Yarrow Yang. Yarrow Zueling had a shy expression on her face. She was like a little girl, secretly sizing up Zhuowen. The corners of her mouth could not help but reveal a secret smile. Yarrow Yang looked at the young man in front of him with a complicated expression. He never thought that the unruly young man would become so terrifying 3 years later. Even the demon king was killed by him and saved the entire human race. Protector Zhuo, I never thought that you would be so powerful. Did I misjudge you before? Yarrow Zueling seemed to have gathered her courage. Her beautiful eyes looked straight at Zhuowen as she spoke softly. Zhuowen could also see the strange expression on Yarrow Zueling's face. His eyes flickered as he said, all of this is thanks to the sacred lord. Otherwise, my strength would not have increased so quickly. All right, it's time for me to go. Go? Where are you going? Hearing this, Yarrow Zueling suddenly asked in a somewhat panicked manner. Her pretty face was a little pale. To where I should go. Zhuowen was not from this world after all. Now that 10 breaths of time was up, Taoist master Kang Long's power had begun to summon him. Boom! A strong beam of light pierced through the sky and suddenly descended from the sky. It immediately enveloped Zhuowen. A strong suction force came from within, causing Zhuowen to slowly fly up into the sky. Looking at the beam of light that had suddenly descended, as well as the young man who was continuously rising in the beam of light, everyone was stunned. Protector Zhuo. The sacred lord roared angrily. He stomped his foot and tried to pull Zhuowen back. Unfortunately, The moment his right hand reached into the beam of light, a terrifying force exploded. The sacred lord immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Looking at the sacred lord who was sent flying and spitting out blood, everyone's eyes narrowed. What a terrifying beam of light! Even the sacred lord was injured when he touched it. Chapter 8:27. Divine Sun Cauldron. When the pillar of light disappeared, even Zhuowen's figure completely disappeared from everyone's sight. For a moment, the entire Shenzhen became incomparably silent. What's going on? That pillar of light descended from the sky, and then the great protector disappeared just like that. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The scene just now was truly inconceivable. However, they had no more reasonable explanation and could only remain silent. The sacred leader slowly stood up with the help of a few Shenzhen elders. He raised his head and looked at Zhuowen's figure that had already disappeared. His eyes were filled with shock. That pillar of light was too terrifying. He had only come into contact with it for a moment, but he had been injured and reduced to such a sorry state. Where did Protector Zhuo come from? Could it be that he's not from this world at all? The sacred leader's gaze was complicated. He suddenly remembered that Zhuowen's origins had been a mystery from the moment he appeared. After all, Zhuowen was so young, but his own strength was so terrifying. If he was a human from this world, then as the sacred leader of Shenzhen, it was impossible for him not to know. However, Zhuowen seemed to have appeared out of nowhere and appeared in Shenzhen. Then, he was taken away by a pillar of light that descended from the sky. These various phenomena made the sacred leader suspect that Zhuowen might not be from this world at all. Perhaps Protector Zhuo is a powerhouse from the same world as the Daoist who rode the pale white dragon 10,000 years ago, he muttered softly. Zhuowen's appearance was too sudden, and the strength he displayed was also extremely shocking. The sacred leader could not help but associate Zhuowen with the Daoist Kang Long from 10,000 years ago. Both of them were equally mysterious, and at the same time, they had saved the human race. The light gradually faded, and Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He realized that he was no longer in Shenzhen, but in an extremely grand hall. This hall was extremely large, and above it was a domed dome. The surface of the dome was dotted with countless stars, and it looked mysterious and distant. At the foot of the hall, there were countless clouds and mist spreading out. Congratulations, Tester. You've passed the first layer of the Azure Dragon Hall. A grand voice resounded throughout the entire great hall. Zhuowen recognized it the moment he heard it. Wasn't this the voice of Daoist Kang Long? I've passed the first layer of the world. This Daoist Kang Long should at least show some interest. Zhuowen muttered in his heart. This layer of heaven and earth was both difficult and simple. After all, as long as one could comprehend the power of heaven and earth within 3 years, it would be enough to deal with the invasion of the demonic beasts. This was because the power of heaven and earth was very effective against the demonic beasts. If Zhuowen hadn't comprehended the power of the Azura blood spear, it would have been difficult for him to deal with the Devil King. Therefore, as long as he comprehended the power of the Azura blood spear, he would be able to pass. The Azure Dragon Palace is the work of my blood, sweat, and tears. It contains the numinous treasures, origin formations, and various armor skills and secret techniques that I have collected and refined over the years. The entire Azure Dragon Hall is my proud work. It has already reached the level of a saint rank spirit treasure. At this point, the Daoist Kang Long's voice was filled with pride. It was obvious that the Azure Dragon Hall was his proud work. Saint rank spirit treasure? It's actually so high level. Hearing this, Zhuowen was shocked. The highest level he had come into contact with was the heaven rank spirit treasure, and after the heaven rank were the emperor rank and the emperor rank. After the emperor rank was the saint rank. This was a terrifying spirit treasure that only saints could use. Ordinary warriors referred to emperor rank spirit treasures as emperor weapons, emperor rank spirit treasures as emperor weapons, and saint rank spirit treasures as saint weapons. The peach blossom origin diagram used by Emperor Qing was an emperor weapon. Zhuoan did not expect that the Azure Dragon Hall was actually a spirit treasure that was even more terrifying than the peach blossom origin diagram. It was actually a saint-rank spirit treasure, but when he thought about how the master of the Azure Dragon Hall, Daoist Kang Long, was a powerful saint, Zhuoan felt relieved. Through this layer of heaven and earth, you have the qualifications to obtain a emperor-rank spirit treasure and a special secret technique. Daoist Kang Long's voice sounded again. Then, countless starlight descended from the dome, forming a screen of light. On the screen of light, there were rows of dazzling words. Only when he focused his eyes did Zhuoan discover that the contents of these glowing words were actually the names of various kinds of soul treasures. There were even classifications within them, ranging from heaven-rank soul treasures to saint-rank soul treasures. Furthermore, the higher the classification, the fewer soul treasures there were. Among them, there was only one saint-rank spirit treasure, and that was the Azure Dragon Hall. There were 5 emperor-rank spirit treasures. These 5 were the Gourd of Heaven and Earth, the 8 Spears of Heaven, the Taiji Mysterious Gate, the Taisha Origin Sword, and the Thorny Divine Armor. Inside the emperor-rank spirit treasure, Zhuoan's gaze was fixed on the 8 Spears of Heaven. There were a total of 8 Spears of Heaven, and they possessed the power of the heavens. If he used the 8 Spears of Heaven, it was enough to crush and destroy the heavens. Its power was extremely terrifying. Zhuoan himself was a spear user, and when he used the Nirvana of the Great Sun, he could transform into 4 heads and 8 arms. The 8 Spears of Heaven was too suitable for him. Unfortunately, the 8 Spears of Heaven were emperor-rank spirit treasures, and Zhuoan could only choose one emperor-rank spirit treasure after passing through the first layer of heaven and earth. Daoist Kang Long, if I pass through the second layer of heaven and earth, can I choose an emperor-rank spirit treasure? Zhuoan suddenly raised his head and asked. After a long while, Daoist Kang Long's voice came from the hall. If you pass through the second layer of heaven and earth, you can choose an emperor-rank spirit treasure. If you pass through the third layer of heaven and earth, you can control the entire Azure Dragon Hall and become the master of the Azure Dragon Hall. However, the 3 layers of heaven and earth, each layer is more difficult than the last. The difficulty of the second layer of heaven and earth is 100 times that of the first layer of heaven and earth, while the difficulty of the third layer of heaven and earth is 10,000 times that of the first layer of heaven and earth. Want to pass through the second layer of heaven and earth? Only by having the strength of peak Empyrean realm will there be a trace of success, so act according to your ability. Hearing that, Zhuoan's pupils constricted slightly. The difficulty of the second layer of heaven and earth was actually 100 times that of the first layer of heaven and earth, and it at least required the strength of peak Empyrean realm to have a trace of success. The second layer of heaven and earth was actually so difficult, then the third layer of heaven and earth was even more out of reach for Zhuoan. Then my current strength is insufficient, wouldn't entering the second layer of heaven and earth be courting death? Zhuoan asked again. Although in the first layer of heaven and earth this time, Zhuoan's harvest was quite bountiful, and his cultivation also advanced from the initial stage of the Xuanzuan realm to the peak of the Xuanzuan realm, his strength was only around the Golden Venerable realm, still too far away from the Empyrean realm. Listening to Daoist Kang Long's suggestion, wanting to pass through the second layer of heaven and earth, one's strength had to be at least peak Empyrean realm to have a trace of a chance. Thinking up to here, Zhuoan felt somewhat of a headache. Whoosh! A ray of light landed in Zhuoan's palm, and a white jade token appeared. On the surface of the jade token, the word Kang was written. This is the Kang Long token. With the Kang Long token, you have 3 chances to enter and exit the Kang Long Hall. If you don't pass through the third layer of heaven and earth in these 3 chances, then you have no fate with the Kang Long Hall. Daoist Kang Long said indifferently. Holding the Kang Long token in his palm, Zhuoan's eyes narrowed, and he was quite surprised in his heart. It seemed that this Daoist Kang Long was not someone who did not leave any leeway. He actually had this kind of token to enter and exit the Kang Long Hall. This also meant that he, Zhuoan, could directly teleport out with this Kang Long token. As for the second layer of heaven and earth, he could wait until his strength was stronger before entering. This Daoist Kang Long's rule is quite humane. Zhuoan nodded and muttered to himself in satisfaction. Tester, choose your spirit treasure and secret method. As for staying or leaving, it's all up to you. Daoist Kang Long's voice once again sounded in Zhuowen's mind. Nodding his head, Zhuowen's gaze went past the Emperor Stage Spirit Treasure category and landed on the Emperor Stage Spirit Treasure category. He knew that it was impossible for him to exchange for the 8 Spears of Sky Burial now. There were quite a number of Emperor Stage Spirit Treasure categories. There were actually close to 100 of them. It was a dazzling lineup that dazzled Zhuowen's eyes. Kid, you have too few life-saving spirit treasures. This Dragon Lord advises you to choose a defensive spirit treasure. Although your physical body is indeed very strong, if you encounter a peak Empyrean or an Emperor Stage expert, you will be killed in an instant. Xiao Hei's voice suddenly sounded. At this moment, her voice was filled with seriousness. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. Ever since Emperor Qing almost stripped his dragon soul, Zhuowen was full of fear and vigilance towards Emperor Qing. At the same time, he also realized that his defense was indeed too weak. Perhaps it was because the Nirvana Vairocana was too powerful before, so Zhuowen did not pay much attention to his own defense. After the sneak attack by Shu Lingtian last time, Zhuowen completely realized that he was indeed too careless about his own defense. You're right. This time, I must find a defensive spirit treasure. Nodding his head, Zhuowen looked at the list and began to search for defensive spirit treasures. Soon, he locked onto 3 defensive spirit treasures that were extremely suitable for him. These 3 spirit treasures were all top-grade monarch rank spirit treasures, and one of them was called the Evil King Armor. Supposedly, this armor was made from the blood essence of a great devil that had committed heinous crimes during the ancient times, and it was filled with extremely terrifying resentment. Wearing this Evil King armor, once someone attacked you, they would be attacked by the endless resentment contained in the Evil King armor. If you were caught off guard, it would be enough to cause the attacker to be corroded by the resentment and fall into a daze for a short period of time. Moreover, its defensive power was extremely terrifying. The second was the 8 Dragons picture. It was a huge calligraphy painting. It was refined with the soul and blood essence of 8 dragons. It could summon 8 dragons to protect oneself. Its defense was extremely strong. The third was the Divine Sun Furnace. It was a furnace with sun runes engraved on its surface. It was said that it could absorb the power of the sun and form a powerful defense. Moreover, it was said that the Divine Sun Furnace also had the effect of tempering the body. It could greatly increase the strength of the owner's body. Looking at these 3 spirit treasures, Zhuowen hesitated. It could be said that these 3 defensive spirit treasures were very strong. Whether it was the resentment special effect of the Evil King armor, the powerful defense of the 8 dragons picture, or the tempering effect of the Divine Sun Furnace, he was more interested in them. Chapter 828. Go out, I choose the Divine Sun Cauldron. Zhuowen shouted at the Azure Dragon Hall. Whiz. As soon as the shout fell, a blazing sun slowly rose from the top of the hall. The blazing light almost caused Zhuowen to narrow his eyes. Within the blazing sun, there was a 3-meter wide furnace floating. The surface of the furnace was engraved with sun runes. When the blazing sun reached its peak, it fell like the setting sun. In the end, it quietly landed in front of Zhuowen, revealing the appearance of a furnace. It was the Divine Sun Cauldron. Stretching out his right hand, Zhuowen stroked the surface of the Divine Sun Cauldron and immediately felt a blazing heat. It was as if what appeared in front of him was not a furnace but a real sun. Boom! The sun runes on the surface of the Divine Sun Cauldron suddenly lit up. Dazzling sun flames surged out and surrounded Zhuowen in the middle. The blazing temperature almost caused the surrounding space to collapse and become unstable. Being in the middle of the sun's fire, Zhuowen did not feel the slightest bit of discomfort. Instead, his entire body felt warm. Furthermore, he discovered that the sun's fire had actually entered his body and was constantly tempering his body. The Divine Sun Cauldron indeed has the effect of tempering the body. It's really magical. Feeling his body being constantly tempered, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of pleasant surprise. With a wave of his right hand, countless sun flames were immediately sucked into the Divine Sun Cauldron. Then, Zhuowen kept it in his spirit ring. I've already chosen the spirit treasure, so now it's time to choose the secret technique. After putting away the divine sun cauldron, Zhuowen's gaze fell on the light screen. It belonged to the category of secret techniques. The number of secret techniques that Daoist Kang Long had collected over the years was extremely large, actually reaching several thousand types. At a glance, it was actually densely packed with the names of secret techniques. Among them, there were attack type, defense type, special type, and so on, which really broadened Zhuowen's horizons. Looking at the dense array of secret techniques on the light screen, Zhuowen revealed a hesitant expression. To be honest, his attack power was already extremely strong, and with the divine sun cauldron, his defense wasn't bad either. There was no need for these two types of secret techniques. Then I'll choose the special type secret technique. Zhuowen murmured softly as he looked at the list of special secret techniques. After a period of filtering, he quickly fixed his eyes on one of the secret techniques. 100 Transformation Technique? This secret technique was called the 100 Transformations Technique. This secret technique had nothing to do with fighting, but it had an extremely powerful effect, and that was the ability to transform. Moreover, there were thousands of transformations. Martial artists who cultivated the 100 Transformation Divine Technique could change their appearance, aura, and cultivation at will. Moreover, this secret technique was so superb that even experts with higher cultivation would find it difficult to see through their essence. This is good. It can even conceal one's aura and cultivation level. Looking at the 100 Transformation Divine Technique in front of him, Zhuowen's eyes flashed. After choosing the secret technique, he was prepared to leave the Azure Dragon Palace, and he had many enemies in the imperial capital. Not to mention the mysterious and powerful Emperor Qing, just the Feng, Cao, and Glan families wanted nothing more than to kill Zhuowen. In addition, the Azure Dragon Branch Palace was also eyeing Zhuowen covetously. If he, Zhuowen, were to openly appear in the imperial capital like this, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, if he, Zhuowen, cultivated the secret technique of the 100 Transformation Divine Technique and changed his appearance, aura, and cultivation, then even if he appeared in the imperial capital, no one would be able to recognize him. At that time, Zhuowen would be much safer. I'll choose this 100 Transformation Divine Technique. After choosing the secret technique, the Azure Dragon Taoist handed the secret technique Jade Slip to Zhuowen on time. Kid. Cultivate the 100 Transformation Divine Technique before leaving the Azure Dragon Palace, Xiao Hei suddenly said. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. Then, his consciousness entered the Jade Slip, and he silently studied the 100 Transformation Divine Technique. 3 days later, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes, and a meaningful smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Then, a ray of black light flashed across Zhuowen's face, and his face instantly changed. He no longer had the appearance of a youth, but that of a middle-aged man. This middle-aged man's face was sallow, and his eyes were lifeless. He looked like a sickly person, as if he would be blown away by the wind. Moreover, Zhuowen's aura had become completely different, and his cultivation had been concealed to around the ultimate emperor realm. This 100 Transformation Divine Technique is really amazing. It can actually change my appearance, aura, and cultivation at the same time. Moreover, my appearance can continuously change according to my will. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth were full of smiles. This 100 Transformation Divine Technique was like a timely rain to him, and it was extremely important. It's time to go out. I wonder where this Azure Dragon token will teleport me to. It won't teleport me to the true dragon's corpse at the bottom of the magma pool, right? At this point, Zhuowen's expression turned somewhat ugly. He knew that the soaring serpent was still near the true dragon's corpse, waiting there. If he went out, wouldn't he be sending himself to his death? Although his strength had greatly improved, he still wasn't very confident that he could face the soaring serpent. That was a terrifying giant beast from ancient times. Just its terrifying physical body alone was already comparable to an existence like Emperor Qing. The Azure Dragon token contains the miniature universe formation. It can teleport you to any place within a range of 10,000 miles. As long as you want it, it can teleport you to any place you want. The Azure Dragon Taoist's voice rang out again. Hearing this, Zhuowen was relieved. According to the Azure Dragon Taoist's words, he should be able to directly rely on the Azure Dragon token to teleport to the Imperial capital outside the Dragon Veins. As he spoke, Zhuowen no longer hesitated. He channeled his origin energy into the Azure Dragon token and immediately activated the miniature universe formation within the token. A pillar of light enveloped Zhuowen, and then Zhuowen disappeared from the hall. In a desolate area outside the Imperial capital, a pillar of light suddenly appeared, and then a middle-aged man with a sallow complexion appeared in this desolate area. This person was Zhuowen after changing his appearance. Looking around, Zhuowen's gaze stared at the huge Imperial capital in front of him and said to himself, "I'm finally out. Xiaohei, how long have we been in the Dragon Veins?" "About a month," Xiaohei said unhurriedly. "It's already been a month. I wonder how Big Brother Hantian and the geniuses of Muqin County are doing. I need to enter the Imperial capital to find out more." As he spoke, Zhuowen took a step forward, and his entire body was like the wind as he quickly rushed towards the Imperial capital in front of him. Not long after, Zhuowen entered the Imperial capital. Looking at the huge streets of the Imperial capital and the countless martial artists that came and went, Zhuowen's gaze revealed a trace of emotion. Although he had only stayed in the Dragon Veins for a month, the flow of time in this layer of heaven and earth was so abnormal. In reality, he had already stayed for a full 3 years, and it felt as if a very, very long time had passed. "Let's go to the Drunken Spring Pavilion first." As he spoke, Zhuowen followed the route in his mind and rushed towards the Drunken Spring Pavilion. After all, within the Imperial capital, he was most familiar with the Drunken Spring Pavilion. Moreover, the Drunken Spring Pavilion's lady should be extremely well informed, so finding the Drunken Spring Pavilion should be the best choice. The Drunken Spring Pavilion was still bustling with people. Many high-ranking officials and powerful martial artists all entered the Drunken Spring Pavilion to listen to music and drink wine, and to pretend to be cultured. "Yo, sir, please come in, please come in. I wonder if sir has come to the Drunken Spring Pavilion to enjoy the dance, drink wine, or stay." Arriving at the entrance of the Drunken Spring Pavilion, a woman who still retained her charm enthusiastically said to Zhuowen. Looking at this beautiful woman, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. This woman was not Lady Shu, but a woman he did not know. Logically speaking, it was usually Lady Shu who hosted this kind of reception ceremony at the entrance. Why was it different today? "I'm here to look for Lady Shu," Zhuowen said indifferently. As soon as these words came out, the smile on the beautiful woman's face suddenly stiffened. Her beautiful eyes flickered, but she still smiled and said, "Sir, I'm afraid you've remembered wrongly. Our Drunken Spring Pavilion doesn't have a person called Lady Shu." No Lady Shu? A few months ago, I was still received by Lady Shu. How come there's no such person now?" Zhuowen suddenly snorted coldly. The beautiful woman's face froze, and her smile faded a lot. She said somewhat coldly, "Sir, it seems like you're here to cause trouble. I've already said that our Drunken Spring Pavilion doesn't have a person called Lady Shu. If you're here to cause trouble, please leave. Our Drunken Spring Pavilion is not something you can afford to offend." "Oh, you're saying that I can't afford to offend your Drunken Spring Pavilion? Today, I'd like to see just how I can't afford to offend you." Zhuowen sneered. He had to find Lady Shu. Moreover, from the beautiful woman's words, Zhuowen could feel the latter's cold attitude towards Lady Shu, as well as the changes in her expression. He was sure that the beautiful woman definitely knew about Lady Shu, and might even know her whereabouts. However, what puzzled Zhuowen was that he had only been missing for a little over a month, and the Drunken Spring Pavilion had changed so much. Even Lady Shu had disappeared without a trace. He did not know what had happened in this 1 month. "It seems like you're here to cause trouble. Don't blame me for being impolite." The beautiful woman's beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent, and a terrifying aura surged out. She was actually an ultimate 7-wheel emperor. The confrontation between Zhuowen and the beautiful woman instantly attracted the attention of many people in the Drunken Spring Pavilion. A group of armored guards surged out of the pavilion and surrounded Zhuowen. "Sir, I'll give you one more chance. Leave the drunken spring pavilion immediately, or you'll suffer later, the beautiful woman said as she stared coldly at Zhuowen. Zhuowen shook his head and said, I only want to know Lady Shu's whereabouts. Since you won't tell me, I'll force you to tell me. As he spoke, Zhuowen stomped his foot, and his entire body transformed into an illusory shadow. In the blink of an eye, all the surrounding guards let out shrill cries as they were smashed to the ground by Zhuowen. The beautiful woman didn't even have time to react before a hand grabbed her neck and lifted her off the ground like a little chick. You! Who are you? The beautiful woman was both shocked and furious as she stared at the middle-aged man before her. Speak. I only want to know Lady Shu's whereabouts, Zhuowen said coldly. I know where Lady Shu is. Put her down first. Chapter 829. Imperial City Dungeon. A beautiful figure slowly walked out from the intoxicated spring pavilion. Her figure was graceful, and her dance was graceful. With a veil covering her body, it caused one's imagination to run wild. His gaze slowly moved up, and an appearance that was tender and beautiful like a flower appeared before Zhuowen's eyes, and it was extremely breathtaking. The person who appeared in front of him was Moyan Wushong, the head of the Drunken Spring Pavilion, who had invited many young talents to challenge the morning bell and evening drum. So it's Miss Wushong. Zhuowen's expression softened. He gently put down the beautiful woman and stared at the peerless beauty who had appeared in front of him. Does this young master know me? Moyan Wushong's beautiful eyes flashed as she looked at Zhuowen, who had turned into a waxen middle-aged man. She revealed a trace of doubt. She didn't seem to know this middle-aged man in front of her. However, the latter's gaze revealed that he was quite familiar with her. Zhuowen also realized that he had lost his composure. He calmed down and said indifferently, Miss Wushong's reputation in the Imperial City is not small. How could I not know of your beauty? Also, since Miss Wushong knows the whereabouts of Mother Shu, can you tell me a thing or two? Moyan Wushong looked at the middle-aged man in front of her with some doubt. She didn't know why, but she felt that this middle-aged man gave her a familiar feeling. It was a very strange feeling. However, after looking carefully for a long time, she still discovered that this person's appearance and temperament gave her a very unfamiliar feeling. She had definitely never seen this person before, but that familiar feeling caused her to frown slightly. After pondering for a moment, Moyan Wushong nodded and said, then follow me first. After saying that, Moyan Wushong slowly led the way in front. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a thoughtful look as he followed behind Moyan Wushong. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that he still couldn't see through Moyan Wushong's cultivation. From beginning to end, Moyan Wushong seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog, making people unable to see through her. This woman is not to be underestimated. Her cultivation base is concealed by a layer of power. Even this master dragon is unable to see through her cultivation base. Xiao Hei's voice rang out within Zhuowen's mind. Hearing this, Zhuowen's expression changed. Even Xiao Hei couldn't see through Moyan Wushong. It seemed that Moyan Wushong wasn't simple. Actually, when Zhuowen had played the morning bell and evening drum, he had known that Moyan of War was not simple. He had just not paid much attention to it at the time. But now, even Xiao Hei couldn't see through Moyan Wushong's depth. It seemed that this woman wasn't simple. He didn't know what this woman's identity was, but it seemed that she wasn't as simple as she seemed. Moyan Wushong brought Zhuowen to the courtyard where she lived. It was still surrounded by rockery, and there was a pavilion. There was a stone table with a guzheng on it. Rockery, pavilion, stone table, and guzheng. At this moment, the four artistic conceptions were intertwined. It was still so tranquil and elegant. May I know why young master is looking for Shu Niang? Moyan Wushong slowly sat in front of the guzheng and asked lazily. Zhuowen shook his head and said with a smile, actually, with Miss Wushong here, it doesn't matter if I look for Shu Niang or not. As he spoke, Zhuowen's face began to change. From a middle-aged man with a sallow complexion, he slowly turned into a handsome young man. He returned to his original appearance. Looking at the young man in front of him, Moyan Wushong's originally lazy expression gradually faded away. He revealed a trace of surprise and said, "Young Master Zhuo? So it's you." Zhuowen's main purpose in looking for Xu Niang was to understand what had happened in the imperial capital during this month. He also wanted to inquire about the whereabouts of Lu Hantian. Moyan Wushang in front of him was quite mysterious. He was probably even more well-informed than Xu Niang. Moreover, even if Moyan Wushang told Emperor Qing, Zhuowen was not afraid. After all, he had the 100 transformation technique. He could change his appearance and aura at will. Knowing that Zhuowen was not dead was useless. When Emperor Qing searched the entire city for him, he could rely on a secret technique to transform into another person. It would be very difficult to catch Zhuowen. This was also why Zhuowen was not worried about revealing his true appearance in front of Moyan Wushang. In the imperial capital, it has been rumored that young Master Zhuo was killed by an expert from the Blue Dragon Hall. Moreover, young Master Zhuo was absent from the Marquis battle for no reason. I thought it was true. Now it seems that it was just a rumor. Moyan Wushang quickly regained her composure. However, she did not lose her composure. Instead, her beautiful eyes flashed as she said, "It seems that young Master Zhuo wants to inquire about the whereabouts of Lu Hantian." Zhuowen looked at Moyan Wushang, who had quickly regained her composure. He nodded and said, "Yes. I think Miss Wushang won't refuse such a small matter, right?" Moyan Wushang covered her mouth and laughed. "It is indeed a small matter." Young Master Zhuo successfully opened the morning bell and evening drum. This young woman is very grateful. This young woman will not hide this matter from young Master Zhuo. At this point, Moyan Wushang's expression suddenly became serious. She said softly, "Tell me the truth. Lu Hantian's situation can't be considered good. After Lu Hantian went to the imperial capital a month ago, it was as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. He has not appeared in the imperial capital since. Moreover, as far as I know, Lu Hantian seemed to have offended Emperor Qing for some reason. He was captured by Emperor Qing and thrown into the imperial capital's dungeon." The imperial capital's dungeon? Hearing this, Zhuowen's face turned slightly ugly. He knew quite a bit about the imperial capital's dungeon. It was said that the imperial capital's dungeon was built by the imperial family to imprison powerful cultivators. There was no lack of ultimate emperor realm cultivators and even some 4 venerable realm cultivators. These cultivators were basically villains who had committed heinous crimes or cultivators who were enemies of Emperor Qing. These people were basically mercilessly suppressed by Emperor Qing and could not appear outside for eternity. Instead, they were trapped in the dungeon for the rest of their lives. Moreover, this dungeon was personally designed by Emperor Qing. Not only were there many powerful guards inside, but it also contained all kinds of powerful mechanisms. Even a heavenly venerable realm cultivator would find it extremely difficult to break through the imperial capital's dungeon. Although Zhuowen knew that Lu Hantian's fate would not be good after Emperor Qing failed to extract the dragon soul from his body, he did not expect that Emperor Qing would throw him into the imperial capital's dungeon. This Emperor Qing is really ruthless. Zhuowen cursed in his heart. Although Zhuowen was extremely jealous of Emperor Qing, it was a pity that Emperor Qing was an emperor realm cultivator. This kind of cultivator was like a mountain to him. It was impossible for him to be a match for Emperor Qing. "It seems that I have to make a trip to the imperial capital's dungeon." Frowning slightly, Zhuowen looked at Moyan Wushang and said, "Miss Wushang, do you know the layout of the imperial capital's dungeon?" After asking this question, Zhuowen felt a little regretful. Although Moyan Wushang was extremely mysterious, the imperial capital's dungeon was designed by Emperor Qing. No matter how resourceful Moyan Wushang was, it was unlikely that she knew the specific layout. Moreover, Zhuowen was undoubtedly hinting to Moyan Wushang that he was going to the imperial capital's dungeon to save someone. If Moyan Wushang revealed this matter to Emperor Qing in advance, wouldn't Zhuowen be in danger? Moyan Wushang chuckled and raised her jade-like hand. Suddenly, a jade-colored scroll appeared in her palm. She said, "This scroll records the layout of the imperial capital's dungeon. However, I have something that I need your help with." Looking at the scroll in Moyan Wushang's hand, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of joy. He did not expect Moyan Wushang to really have the layout of the imperial capital's dungeon. Zhuowen could not help but think highly of Moyan Wushang. Miss Wushang, please tell me. Slowly calming down, Zhuowen knew that Moyan Wushang had taken out such a precious layout of the dungeon. He was afraid that she would not give it up so easily. If you go to the imperial capital's dungeon, you can help me save someone, Moyan Wushang said indifferently. As expected, Zhuowen's eyes slightly narrowed. He knew that Moyan Wushang would not give him the layout so easily. She actually wanted him to save someone in the imperial capital's dungeon. If Miss Wushang gives me the layout of the dungeon, I am willing to help you save someone. Zhuowen was worried about Lu Hantian's safety. He did not hesitate to agree. You are indeed straightforward. This is a portrait of that person. As for the location of this person and Lu Hantian, I have already marked them in the layout. You only need to go to the marked location to save someone. Moyan Wushang said with a faint smile. Even the markings are marked. It seems that Moyan Wushang originally wanted to save this person. However, it just so happens that I need her help, so she asked me to save this person. Zhuowen thought to himself. His gaze converged on the portrait in Moyan Wushang's hands. He saw that the portrait was of a middle-aged man. However, this middle-aged man had very long hair and a golden beard. He looked like a dignified lion. I will save this person as well. Now, Miss Wushang should give me the layout of the dungeon, right? Zhuowen nodded and said with an expressionless face. Of course. Moyan Wushang waved her lily-white hand, and the jade-colored scroll was handed over to Zhuowen. Taking the jade scroll, Zhuowen's consciousness entered the scroll and silently browsed through its contents. There were indeed many diagrams drawn on the scroll. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that these diagrams were the overall layout of a building. Zhuowen knew that the contents of these drawings should be the overall layout of the imperial capital's dungeon. It was indeed very detailed. After looking at it, Zhuowen let out a sigh of relief. There was a trace of shock in his eyes. This imperial capital's dungeon was simply a work of art. The structure inside was so complex that it almost made Zhuowen gasp in amazement. From top to bottom, the imperial capital's dungeon was divided into 18 levels. The 18th level was thousands of feet underground. It was heavily guarded and there were countless experts. After looking at the layout of the dungeon in his hands, Zhuowen's face became more and more unsightly. If he didn't have this layout, wanting to break into the imperial capital's dungeon was simply courting death. Even if he had this layout in his hands, he didn't have much confidence that he could successfully bring Lu Hantian out of the dungeon. Moyan Wushang also saw Zhuowen's difficult expression. She chuckled and said, Actually, you don't have to be so anxious to save Lu Hantian. In the imperial capital's dungeon, Lu Hantian's life is not in danger. However, I heard that Qing Yang from the Azure Dragon Division took Qing Yi and Qing Wu and set off for Muqin County a month ago. It is said that they plan to capture the Riker descendants. Miss Wushang, what is the meaning of this? Zhuowen snorted coldly. Moyan Wushang's gaze was calm and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. He opened his jade-like hand and there was a golden talisman in his palm that was emitting a brilliant golden light. This is a teleportation talisman. It can teleport you 100,000 miles away. The Imperial Capital County is only 100,000 miles away from Muqin County. With this teleportation talisman, you can quickly reach Muqin County. With a flick of his finger, Moyan Wushang handed the teleportation talisman to Zhuowen. Teleportation talisman? It can teleport you 100,000 miles away? Looking at the ordinary-looking golden talisman in his palm, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with shock. This teleportation talisman was so magical that it could teleport you 100,000 miles away. Generally, treasures with this kind of teleportation ability were extremely precious and rare. However, Moyan Wushang had given this item to Zhuowen. This was obviously beyond Zhuowen's expectations. Although Zhuowen had helped Moyan Wushang to open the morning bell and evening drum, Moyan Wushang had also helped Zhuowen enter the mysterious comprehending realm. Moyan Wushang did not owe him anything. However, Moyan Wushang had helped him in every aspect and had even given this teleportation talisman to Zhuowen. This was too good. Zhuowen did not think that his relationship with Moyan Wushang could be so good. Miss Wushang, although we are friends, for you to give me such a precious item for no reason, I am filled with doubts. Zhuowen cautiously said. Moyan Wushang began to laugh and said, I'm not helping you because of you, I'm helping you because of big sister Chen Shui. Chen Shui? You're talking about Mu Chen Shui? Could it be you're someone from the Divine Arts Academy? Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He finally understood why Moyan Wushang was helping him. It was all because of Mu Chen Shui. Gee, it seems like you're not a fool. I am indeed a disciple of the Divine Arts Academy. In the academy, big sister Chen Shui has never forgotten you. After saying this, Moyan Wushang's beautiful eyes were filled with a sly look as he continued. Moreover, not only is big sister Chen Shui beautiful, her aura is as pure as a lotus. There are many pursuers in the academy, adding in the fact that big sister Chen Shui often mentions your name. Although you're not in the Divine Arts Academy, your name Zhuowen is already famous in the academy. There are many geniuses in the academy who are gnashing their teeth at you, wishing they could trample you under their feet. Hearing this, Zhuowen revealed a bitter smile. He never thought that before he even entered the Divine Arts Academy, he would already be famous. It seemed like Mu Chunxue had attracted quite a bit of hatred for him in the academy. Moyan Wushang suddenly changed his calm demeanor and patted Zhuowen's shoulder in a heroic manner. He said with a laugh, you have to work hard. The geniuses of the Divine Arts Academy are not things your Qing Xian Empire can compare to. Although your strength is not bad, I'm afraid you don't even have the qualifications to enter the inner court. If you don't want to be beaten in the academy, you should quickly increase your cultivation. Moyan Wushang's sudden change in temperament made Zhuowen stunned. Could it be that Moyan Wushang's calm demeanor from before was just an act? Many thanks for Miss Wushang's reminder. Right now I have to make a trip back to Muqin County. As for the Divine Arts Academy, I'll be there soon. Cupping his hands, Zhuowen's face was filled with gratitude. Since Moyan Wushang was Mu Chunshue's friend, then Zhuowen did not have any doubts in his heart. He happily accepted the latter's transfer talisman. Go. If you go now, you might still be able to make it. Moyan Wushang nodded and said in a serious voice. Nodding his head, Zhuowen suddenly crushed the golden talisman. Instantly, countless rays of golden light shot out, turning into a golden pillar of light that soared into the sky. In the middle of this golden pillar of light, Zhuowen's figure gradually disappeared. This Zhuowen's cultivation is advancing so quickly. In just a month, he's already at the peak of the Xuanzuan realm. Coupled with the assistance of the dragon soul in his body, I'm afraid his current battle strength has become extremely terrifying. After Zhuowen left, Moyan Wushang's eyes revealed a trace of pondering. Although Zhuowen had concealed his own aura, Moyan Wushang's perception was very strong. With a glance, he saw through Zhuowen's true cultivation, and his eyes revealed a trace of surprise. She knew that a month ago, Zhuowen was only a half-step warrior in the Xuanzuan realm. But now, he had directly advanced to the peak of the Xuanzuan realm. His speed was so fast that it was almost shocking. This kind of advancement speed, even in the inner courtyard, I'm afraid is among the best. I'm really looking forward to the scene after this guy enters the Divine Arts Academy. Thinking of the countless pursuers of Mu Chunxue in the academy, who would not be tired of finding trouble with Zhuowen, Moyan Wushang's heart was incomparably happy. Muqin County. At this moment, the county capital was gloomy and gloomy. All the warriors in the county capital raised their heads, and their eyes were filled with worry. At the center of the provincial capital, the towering Origin Qi Tower was currently flickering with an extremely blazing white light. This white light soared into the sky and turned into a white tortoise-shell-like protective barrier, enveloping the entire provincial capital. Around the Vitality Tower, the big shots in the county capital had basically gathered. The three magnates, the master of the meteorite of the Jade Lady Star Court, the master of the ruling sword faction, and Marquis Yongsheng, were quietly floating above the Vitality Tower. Beside the three magnates, Luo Xing, Qing Lian, and Tao were silently following. After the three of them returned, they gathered the three magnates and told them everything that had happened in the imperial city. The three magnates heard that not only had Zhuowen led Muqin County to second place in the Battle of the Nine Counties, but he had also entered the top 3 in the ranking battle. Moreover, even the first prince of the imperial family, Huangfu Wudao, was unable to do anything to Zhuowen. The three magnates were finally shocked. Until now, they still couldn't believe that what Tao and the other two had said was true. Although they recognized Zhuowen's talent, what Zhuowen had done in the imperial city was too sensational. For the geniuses of the other 8 counties outside of the imperial city, being able to enter the top 10 of the Green Emperor list was already a great honor and a blessing. However, not only had Zhuowen entered the top 10, but he had also entered the top 3 with irresistible force. He had the qualifications to be conferred the title of Marquis, and even Huangfu Wudao was unable to do anything to Zhuowen. However, what happened next made the three magnates' hearts sink. Zhuowen's identity as a descendant of the Riker was exposed, and he was hunted down by the experts of the Blue Dragon Hall. In the end, he was killed. It wasn't easy for such a peerless genius to appear in Muqin County, but he had actually died in the imperial city. How could they not be heartbroken? However, what shocked them even more was Zhuowen's identity. He was actually a descendant of the Riker, and Zhuowen also had a dragon soul in his body. It was no wonder that the experts of the Blue Dragon Hall had come looking for him. Moreover, even the county lord of Muqin County, Lu Nantian, had died in the imperial city. The three magnates were incomparably indignant. Originally, they thought that the matter would be settled because of this. However, today, they discovered that Qing Yang had led the experts from the Azure Dragon Hall and joined forces with the Grand Clan, Cao Clan, and Feng Clan to invade their county. They wanted to take over their county completely. Fortunately, their county had a precious treasure like the Vitality Tower. The Vitality Tower had a defensive formation that could envelop the entire county. Although Qing Yang, Glan Haohai, and the others were very strong, they couldn't break through the defensive formation in a short time. However, the hearts of many warriors in the county gradually sank. Although the defensive formation was very strong, it couldn't exist indefinitely. In addition, Qing Yang and the others had joined forces with 4 experts of the Venerable Realm. The defensive formation couldn't be maintained for long. The two of them nodded and stepped forward. Terrifying auras surged from their bodies. At the same time that Qing Yi and Shu Lingtian stepped forward, Grand Haohai, Feng Tian, and Caoji stepped forward as well. Similarly, terrifying auras surged from their bodies. The 5 of them were the strongest people who had come to the imperial city this time. If they worked together, they should be able to break through the defensive formation. Within the defensive formation, the master of the meteorite, Marquis Yongsheng Qin Nai, and Sect Master Shenyuan Li of the Imperial Sword Sect also saw the actions of Grand Haohai and the others. Their faces instantly turned ghastly pale. Qing Yi, Shu Lingtian, Grand Haohai, Feng Tian, and Caoji all emitted terrifying auras. They could naturally tell that the defensive formation really wouldn't be able to last for long if the 5 of them worked together. What should we do? The master of the meteorite asked in a slightly panicked manner. Shenyuan Li's face was sunken, and his complexion did not look any better. As for the Marquis of Yongsheng Qin Nai, his gaze was dark as he said, "Didn't the Blue Dragon Hall come this time for the Riker descendants? If we hand over the Zhuo family, perhaps the Blue Dragon Hall will withdraw because of this, and the pressure on us will lessen by a lot." Luo Xing, Qing Lian, and Tao's faces changed drastically when they heard Qin Nai's words. Tao said with a deep voice, "Marquis Qin, this is not feasible. The Zhuo family is Zhuowen's clansmen. I will not hand them over. Zhuowen is already dead. Why are you still protecting their clansmen? It's not worth risking your lives for this." Qin Nai snorted coldly. With a stomp of his foot, he actually turned into a streak of light and shot towards the house of Marquis Qin. "Marquis Qin, you," Tao's eyes narrowed. With a stomp of his foot, he also turned into a streak of light and caught up to Qin Nai. He stared at Qin Nai coldly. "Tao, you're not my match. You'd better get out of my way. Otherwise, this Marquis can't guarantee that you won't be injured. Qin Nai's gaze became incomparably gloomy. Ever since he knew that Qin Batian had died in the Battle of the Nine Counties, Qin Nai's personality had become even more eccentric. In particular, the more he looked at the other geniuses of Muqin County, the more he disliked them. Although Zhuowen's performance in the imperial capital was extremely gratifying, Qin Nai felt an indescribable jealousy in his heart. The son he had painstakingly raised had died in the Battle of the Nine Counties, and a lowly commoner from a low-level city had actually entered the top 3 of the Azure Emperor rankings. He naturally felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. Now that the Blue Dragon Hall had come to ask for them, Qin Nai naturally couldn't waste his energy to protect those good-for-nothing Zhuo family clansmen. Swoosh swoosh. 2 more figures blocked in front of Qin Nai. These 2 were naturally Luo Xing and Qing Lian. The 2 women's faces were also filled with shock and anger. Marquis Qin, Zhuowen painstakingly obtained 2nd place in the Battle of the Nine Counties for our Muqin County. How can you treat his Zhuo family like this? Even if Zhuowen's whereabouts are unknown, we shouldn't betray him, Luo Xing said with a murderous look in her beautiful eyes. Betray him? That Zhuowen is already dead. Why should we protect his family for him? Also, the Blue Dragon Hall and the 3 families have come to attack Muqin County largely because of that Zhuowen. If it weren't for that Zhuowen, would our Muqin County have fallen to such a state? Qin Nai's face was filled with a cold smile. He stomped his foot, and the aura of a peak ultimate level 9 wheels emperor burst out. He said coldly, "If you don't get out of my way, don't blame me for being impolite." The master of the meteorite, who was originally watching from the side, saw that Luo Xing and Qing Lian had actually made a move to stop Qin Nai. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and a beam of starlight shot out from her sleeve, binding Luo Xing and Qing Lian and pulling them to her side. "Master, why are you doing this? We can't hand over Zhuowen's family." Bound by the starlight, Luo Xing and Qing Lian couldn't move at all. Their eyes were filled with shock and anger as they looked at the master of the meteorite beside them in disbelief. "Luo Xing, Qing Lian, it's best if you don't interfere in this matter," the master of the meteorite shook her head and said with a heavy heart. Seeing the master of the meteorite's appearance, the 2 women also knew that the master of the meteorite had agreed with Qin Nai's approach. She planned to hand over the Zhuo family in hopes that the Blue Dragon Hall would retreat. "Elvia Tao, I think you should get out of the way. Don't force us to make a move." A frenzied beam of swordlight shot over. The master of the ruling sword sect, Shenyuan Li, came to Qin Nai's side and stared indifferently at Elvia Tao. "Brother Shenyuan, I thought you were going to be a nice guy and stop me. Now it seems that I was wrong." Looking at Shenyuan Li beside him, the corners of Qin Nai's mouth curled up slightly as he spoke somewhat mockingly. Shenyuan Li's face was cold as she said without turning her head, "The enemy is right in front of us. Of course, we won't bother about these trivial matters." Elvia Tao's face was pale. He didn't expect that even Shenyuan Li was going to make a move. However, Elvia Tao didn't retreat. Instead, he stomped his foot and the aura of the ultimate 7-wheel emperor realm burst out. "Your actions have already proven your answer. Since that's the case, don't blame us for bullying a junior like you." Shenyuan Li narrowed her eyes. She stomped her foot and the long sword on her back immediately unsheathed. It turned into a rain of swords that filled the sky and swept straight towards Elvia Tao. The terrifying sword Qi cut through the void as if it wanted to crush the sky. Elvia Tao roared angrily and released endless origin energy. It formed a layer of astral wind shield on the surface of his body in an attempt to block the rain of swords. Bang! Unfortunately, the gap between Elvia Tao and Shenyuan Li was too great. The astral wind shield didn't last long before it was broken by the rain of swords. Shenyuan Li spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backwards. "Brother Qin, let's enter the house of Marquis Qin." After repelling Elvia Tao, Shenyuan Li's expression was cold. She didn't continue to pursue. Instead, she turned into a stream of light and entered the house of Marquis Qin. Qin Nai looked meaningfully at the seriously injured Elvia Tao not far away. He stomped his foot and followed Shenyuan Li into the house of Marquis Qin. After a while, Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li brought out a huge cage made of origin energy from the house of Marquis Qin. The people inside the cage were all members of the Zhuo family, including Zhuo Xiangding, Zhuo Beitian, and other high-ranking members of the Zhuo family. The younger generation represented by Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Mai'er were gathered behind Zhuo Xiangding and the others. Their eyes were filled with anger. They were picked up by Lv Tao from Rattan Armor City. Moreover, Lv Tao did treat them with good intentions, which made them have a good impression of him. Of course, the main reason they came to the house of Marquis Qin was to see Zhuowen. After all, the Battle of the 9 Counties was over, and Zhuowen should have returned. Lv Tao didn't tell the Zhuo family about Zhuowen's death. Instead, he said that Zhuowen was delayed by something and would take more than half a year to return. Zhuo Xiangding and the others didn't suspect anything. Instead, they patiently waited for Zhuowen's return in the house of Marquis Qin. However, the sudden activation of the Origin Energy Tower's defensive formation today also attracted the attention of Zhuo Xiangding and the others. Although they didn't know why this happened, they knew that the prefecture capital had encountered some kind of problem. They also knew that they were weak and couldn't help much, so they didn't come out of the house of Marquis Qin. However, Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li suddenly broke in and captured all their family members indiscriminately. This made the Zhuo family very angry and even a little confused. Marquis Qin and Patriarch Shenyuan, what do you mean by this? Why did you capture our Zhuo family members? And where did young master Lv Tao go? Zhuo Xiangding, the supreme leader of the Zhuo family, asked calmly. Shenyuan Li's face was cold and indifferent. Qin Nai sneered and said, "Don't pretend. Your Zhuo family is the descendant of the Riker." Chapter 832. Protective Array. Zhuo Xiangding and the others were bewildered. The fact that the Zhuo family was a Riker descendant was a secret. No one else knew about it, so how did Qin Nai know? Do you know why the protective array of the Vitality Tower was activated? The Blue Dragon Hall of the Imperial Capital has come to capture you Riker descendants. Because you implicated our prefecture, we had no choice but to hand you over, Qin Nai said with an indifferent smile. Zhuo Xiangding's expression was ugly as he asked, how did the Blue Dragon Hall know about this? Zhuo Xiangding knew that since the Blue Dragon Hall had come to capture them, they had clearly confirmed the fact that they were Riker descendants. However, he was still puzzled. The Zhuo family had been extremely low-key for so many years, so how did the Blue Dragon Hall know about their identity as Riker descendants? The secret of your family's genius, Zhuowen, having a dragon soul was revealed. I heard that he was surrounded and killed by the experts of the Blue Dragon Hall. Does the Zhuo family still dare to deny it? Qin Nai sneered. What? The Blue Dragon Hall discovered Zhuowen's dragon soul and killed him? When Qin Nai said this, Zhuo Xiangding and the rest of the family fell silent. Their eyes were filled with grief and indignation. They also didn't expect that Zhuowen's dragon soul would be discovered by the Blue Dragon Hall. They were well aware of how terrifying the Blue Dragon Hall was. If they really sent experts to surround and kill him, Zhuowen's chances of survival were indeed very slim. Did Lv Tao invite the Zhuo family to the prefecture capital to capture us all in one fell swoop? The young and impetuous Zhuo Tian suddenly stepped forward and asked in a somewhat hoarse voice. Qin Nai's lips curled into a mocking smile. He shook his head and said, "No, Lv Tao treated you sincerely. However, with the enemy before us, what's the use of him objecting? He's just a junior." Hearing those words, the members of the Zhuo family also saw the injured Lv Tao. Their eyes flickered, and they knew that they had misunderstood Lv Tao. Boom! Boom! In an instant, the defensive formation shook violently. Grand Hao Hai, Qing Yi, and the other 4 had joined forces to attack the defensive formation. They're making their move. We must take these Zhuo family members and negotiate with them. Shenyuan Li came to Qin Nai's side and said solemnly. Qin Nai nodded. With a wave of his right hand, he lifted the Yuan Qi prison that bound the Zhuo family members and followed Shenyuan Li to the top of the tower. The master of the meteorite's beautiful eyes flickered as she slowly followed behind Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li with the imprisoned Qing Lian and Luo Xing. At this moment, Grand Hao Hai and the other four on the defensive formation also noticed Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li at the top of the Origin Qi Tower below. At the same time, they also noticed the Zhuo family members tied up by Qin Nai. "My lords, can we negotiate?" Qin Nai said loudly. Hearing this, Grand Hao Hai and the other four stopped what they were doing and looked down at Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li mockingly. Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li were only at the pinnacle of the ultimate ninth wheel emperor stage. To the five of them, they were as insignificant as ants. Qing Yang looked past the five of them and looked down at Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li. He said indifferently, "Negotiate? Do you think the two of you are qualified to negotiate with me?" Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li's expressions changed slightly at Qing Yang's words. However, Qin Nai's expression did not change. Instead, he smiled fawningly and said, "You must be Lord Qing Yang of the Blue Dragon Hall. We know the purpose of your visit, Lord Qing Yang. You must be here for the Riker descendants, right? Now, I have all the Riker descendants in my hands. We are willing to offer these Riker descendants to you with both hands. We only ask that Lord Qing Yang let go of our prefecture capital." Qin Nai's posture was very humble, and he had a fawning smile on his face. This servile attitude attracted Lv Atao's disdainful gaze. This Qin Nai is really shameless. Unfortunately, Lv Atao was seriously injured and could not fight at all. Now, he was supported by the other geniuses of the house of Marquis Qin. He could only silently watch Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li negotiate with Qing Yang. "Oh, they are the Riker descendants." Qing Yang glanced at the elemental energy prison in Qin Nai's hand, but his gaze was fixed on Grand Hao Hai. He knew that the Grant family and the Zhuo family had been friends for generations. They should be very familiar with the Zhuo family. Grant Hao Hai nodded at Qing Yang, then looked at Zhuo Xiangding in the elemental energy prison. He smiled and said, "Old man Zhuo, I haven't seen you for more than 20 years. Your bones are quite healthy." Zhuo Xiangding looked deeply at Grant Hao Hai. He took a deep breath and asked, "Grant Hao Hai, was it you who tipped off the Blue Dragon Hall about Zhuowen's dragon soul?" Although Zhuowen's temperament was sometimes quite stubborn, his style of doing things was extremely steady. He did not believe that the former would give himself away so easily and let the Blue Dragon Hall discover his identity as a Riker descendant. Therefore, Zhuo Xiangding had long suspected that someone might have tipped off Zhuowen, and this person was undoubtedly Grant Hao Hai. The corners of Grant Hao Hai's mouth curled up slightly. He suddenly laughed and said, "Old man, you must be joking. The reason why Zhuowen was discovered was mainly because he was too arrogant and didn't know how to restrain himself. This has nothing to do with me." Zhuo Xiangding sneered and said, 20 years ago, Xiaotian suddenly disappeared in the imperial capital. Moreover, it was said that his dragon soul was being hunted down by the Blue Dragon Hall. "I know that this has a lot to do with you. 20 years have passed. You didn't even let Xiaotian's son go. Now you plan to make a move against our Zhuo family?" Speaking up to here, Zhuo Xiangding suddenly said with full vigor, "Grant Hao Hai, my Zhuo family treated your Grant family well. Xiaotian even treated you as a brother. That's why he went to the imperial capital alone with you to help you establish the Grant family. But what about you? Is this how you treat Xiaotian, his son, and his family?" Grant Hao Hai narrowed his eyes, which contained a trace of coldness. He said indifferently, "Old man Zhuo, you're exaggerating. You can't speak without evidence. I didn't know anything about Xiaotian's disappearance back then. As for Zhuowen, I said that it was because he didn't know how to restrain himself that the Blue Dragon Hall had something on him. What does that have to do with me, Grant Hao Hai?" Grant Hao Hai didn't say anything else. He stood silently among the five people. He wanted to see how Qin Nai was going to negotiate with them. Qing Yang glanced meaningfully at Zhuo Xiangding and Grant Hao Hai. He knew that the Grant family and the Zhuo family had a secret that they didn't know about. However, Qing Yang didn't ask. This was someone else's private matter. He was just an outsider and naturally couldn't interfere. Right now, His priority was to take down the Rika remnants. Looking back at Qin Nai, Qing Yang said indifferently, "We have two goals in coming to the imperial capital. One is to capture the Rika remnants, and the other is the Origin Qi Pagoda. If you can hand over the Origin Qi Pagoda with both hands, we can consider not invading your territory." When Qing Yang said this, Qin Nai, Shenyuan Li, and the master of the meteorites' expressions changed. The Origin Qi Pagoda was the foundation of the imperial capital. It was also the foundation that ensured the prosperity of the imperial capital's geniuses. If the Origin Qi Pagoda was taken away by Qing Yang, their imperial capital's foundation would be unstable. At that time, it would be much more difficult to nurture geniuses. Oh, don't tell me you don't want to. With our lineup, it's only a matter of time before we blast open this protective array. Once we break in, it's hard to guarantee that we won't start a massacre, so I know you're all smart people and know the right choice. Seeing Qin Nai and the others hesitate, Qing Yang sneered and his voice became extremely cold, containing a touch of cruel killing intent. Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li's expressions changed slightly. Exchanging a glance, Qin Nai gritted his teeth and said, "We're willing to give you the Origin Qi Pagoda, but after you enter the imperial capital, you must not touch our ever-flourishing Marquis Mansion, the Imperial Sword School, and the Jade Maiden Star Court." Seeing Qin Nai agree, Qing Yang's expression relaxed slightly. "Of course. Our goal is only the Rika remnants and the Origin Qi Pagoda. As long as you know what's good for you, we naturally won't touch your forces." "Then thank you, Lord Qing Yang." Qin Nai smiled flatteringly. Qing Yang snorted and said indifferently, "Then can you open the protective array now? Do you want us to stand outside?" "Marquis Qin, don't open it. Once you do, you'll regret it." Just as Qin Nai was about to open the protective array, Elviatao, who was supported by the geniuses of the House of Marquis Qin, suddenly shouted, wanting to stop Qin Nai. Qing Yang glanced at Elviatao and continued, "Don't lose your life because of the words of some clowns. I've said before, if you don't open it, when we break the array, your forces can forget about existing in the imperial capital. Open it, and I can spare your forces." Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li nodded and did not stop because of Elviatao's words. The two of them repeatedly made hand seals and slapped the top of the Origin Qi Pagoda. Suddenly, the protective array covering the top of the Origin Qi Pagoda completely collapsed into nothingness at this moment. Looking at the dispersing protective array, Qing Yang revealed a faintly discernible smile and immediately led Qing Yi and the others to land on top of the Origin Qi Pagoda. Glan Haohai and the others also entered the Origin Qi Pagoda. "Lord Qing Yang, these are the remnants of the Rika family. I'll leave them to you." Qin Nai came in front of Qing Yang with a fawning smile. With a wave of his right hand, he handed the Origin Qi prison to Qing Yang, his face full of flattery. Taking the Origin Qi prison, Qing Yang faintly glanced at the members of the Zhuo family glaring angrily in the cage. The smile on his lips deepened, and he patted Qin Nai's shoulder. "You've done well. It's my honor to be able to work for Lord Qing Yang." Qin Nai hurriedly nodded and bowed. The fawning smile on his face deepened, as if he was the most loyal dog. Bang! At this moment, Qing Yang's right hand clenched into a fist and smashed into Qin Nai's lower dantian without warning. Powerful Origin Qi invaded and directly destroyed Qin Nai's dantian. Qin Nai's eyes bulged as he looked at Qing Yang in disbelief. He really couldn't understand why Qing Yang would suddenly attack him. "You've made us wait for so long in the protective array. You've also committed a great sin. Consider this a small punishment." Chapter 833. Qing Tian transforming into a dragon. Qin Nai collapsed to the ground, his body trembling. He still couldn't believe that Qing Yang had crippled him. When he saw Qin Nai being crippled, the nearby Shenyuan Li's pupils constricted, and he actually hurriedly covered himself in boundless sword qi as he retreated repeatedly, and his eyes were filled with fear. "Why did you do this? We've already opened the defensive formation for you and even handed over the Rika bloodline. Why did you cripple me?" Qin Nai still couldn't believe it. He shouted hysterically, his voice full of shock and anger. "You're so stupid. Do you believe what we said? Did I promise you anything? Qing Yang sneered. Qingyi, take that guy down and cripple him as well. I have personally come to the county capital. Not only did these magnates of the county capital not come out to welcome me, they even used a defensive formation to obstruct me. They deserve to die. Crippling their cultivation is already the greatest mercy I can give them. Qing Yang pointed at the retreating Shen Yuan Li and ordered Qingyi behind him. Qingyi nodded and quickly rushed towards Shen Yuan Li. Seeing Qingyi rushing over, Shen Yuan Li's face changed. Qing Yang didn't intend to let him go. This made him angry and shocked. At the same time, there was a trace of regret in his heart. If he had listened to Elviatao and didn't open the defensive formation to let Qing Yang and the others in, the capital could still hold on for more than half a month. But now, in order to please Qing Yang, not only did he help Qin Nai hand over the Riker bloodline, but he also opened the defensive formation to let the tiger go back to the mountain. He didn't expect that he would harm himself. Qing Yang actually attacked the two of them as soon as he came in. Sword crossing the world. Shen Yuan Li shouted angrily. Countless sword qi gushed out and turned into a huge long sword under his feet. With a swoosh, the long sword turned into a streamer and flew into the distance with a long tail behind it. Sky Crossing Sword was one of the more powerful body-type armor-type techniques of the Imperial Sword School. It could transform one's sword aura into a long sword and unleash an extremely fast speed. Qingyi snorted coldly, unwilling to be outdone. His right hand formed a claw, and a burst of green light burst out, turning into a huge dragon shadow under his feet. Stepping on the dragon shadow, Qingyi's speed soared to an extremely terrifying level. He was even much faster than Shen Yuan Li. Qingyi caught up to Shen Yuan Li within 10 breaths of time. His right hand formed a claw and grabbed at Shen Yuan Li. Shen Yuan Li could not resist at all. The difference between the two was too great. After grabbing Shen Yuan Li, Qingyi's face was cold. He turned into a green shadow and arrived in front of Qing Yang. He threw Shen Yuan Li in front of Qing Yang and said, "Master Qing Yang, you can do whatever you want with him." Shen Yuan Li's whole body trembled. The people from the Blue Dragon Hall were too strong. Even if he used his strongest movement technique, sword crossing heaven, he still couldn't escape from the hands of the experts from the Blue Dragon Hall. At this moment, Shen Yuan Li had already given up. "I'll give you two choices. Destroy your own cultivation or die. Choose for yourself." Qing Yang stared at Shen Yuan Li indifferently. His voice sounded in Shen Yuan Li's ears, causing the latter's face to turn ugly. "What? It seems that you want to die. In that case, I'll fulfill your wish." The smile on Qing Yang's face grew wider. Yuan Li gathered in the palm of his right hand like a whirlpool. "I'll destroy my own cultivation." Seeing that Qing Yang was about to make a move, Shen Yuan Li made a prompt decision. He raised his hands and then fiercely hit his lower abdomen. There was a crack, like the sound of glass breaking. Shen Yuan Li spat out blood. His dantian had been completely shattered by him. From now on, he would be a cripple. The master of the meteorite, who was originally quite far away, slowly retreated. As early as when Qin Nai was destroyed by Qing Yang, the master of the meteorite had already found that something was wrong, so she quietly retreated. At this moment, the master of the meteorite and Qing Yang were hundreds of miles away. Taking advantage of the time when Qing Yang and the others' attention was on Shen Yuan Li, the master of the meteorite quickly took Qing Lian and Luo Xing to leave this place. When did the master of the meteorite become so timid? Just when the master of the meteorite was about to leave this place, a harsh voice came, causing the master of the meteorite's delicate body to tremble slightly. She turned around and took Qing Lian and Luo Xing back dozens of steps. She looked at the figure that appeared in front of her with a dignified look. This person was extremely ugly and had only one arm. It was Xu Lingtian, who had almost killed Zhuoan with a sneak attack. "Who are you? Are you also a member of the Blue Dragon Hall?" The master of the meteorite protected Qing Lian and Luo Xing and asked coldly. He. It doesn't matter who I am. What's important is that the three of you can't escape. Follow me to where Master Qing Yang is." Xu Lingtian glanced indifferently at the three of them. With a wave of his sleeve, a terrifying yuan power gushed out. It was like a flood and ferocious beast as it wrapped around the meteorite garden's master. The master of the meteorite's face changed slightly. She stretched out her hands and endless starlight swept out, forming countless starry zones around her to protect her body. Unfortunately, Shu Lingtian was a supreme being after all, who was many times more powerful than the master of the meteorite. The terrifying primary energy poured out, and the starlight in front of the master of the meteorite was shattered like paper. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the master of the meteorite retreated continuously. Then, a huge primary energy hand came and grabbed her. Shu Lingtian took advantage of the momentum and carried her in front of Qing Yang. As for Luo Xing and Qing Lian, their cultivation levels were too low, so Shu Lingtian didn't take them seriously. Therefore, he didn't lock them up. Master Qing Yang, this woman is the master of the meteorite, the leader of the last superpower in the prefecture, the Jade Lady Garden. She's at your disposal. Shu Lingtian casually threw the master of the meteorite in front of Qing Yang. Then, he cupped his hands and stood silently behind Qing Yang. Qing Yang nodded to Shu Lingtian and said to the master of the meteorite, "My request is the same. You either destroy your own cultivation or die." The master of the meteorite's face was pale. She gritted her teeth and decisively destroyed her own cultivation. At this point, the leaders of the superpowers in the prefecture were either dead or destroyed. They were basically no longer a threat. A wise man submits to circumstances. Qing Yang's lips curled slightly. Then, she ordered the guards of the Blue Dragon Hall to carry Shenyuan Li, Qin Nai, and the master of the meteorite in her hands. She stood in the sky above the prefecture and shouted. Her voice was like rolling thunder, filling the sky above the prefecture. Warriors of the prefecture, listen carefully, we are from the Blue Dragon Hall of the Imperial City, as well as 3 of the 5 major families, the Grant family, the Cao family, and the Feng family. The purpose of our visit this time is to accept your Muqin County and the Origin Qi Tower in the county capital. As soon as she said this, countless warriors in the prefecture came out. They looked up at Qing Yang and the others in the sky with anger in their eyes. But soon, these warriors saw Shenyuan Li, Qin Nai, and the master of the meteorite in the hands of the warriors of the Blue Dragon Hall. The anger in their eyes turned into shock. Marquis Yongsheng Qin Nai, the leader of the ruling sword sect, Shenyuan Li, and the master of the meteorite of the Jade Lady Star Court were all captured alive by them. This is so powerful. The 5 major families of the Imperial City and the Blue Dragon Hall are so powerful. The 3 leaders are the strongest of the superpowers, but they are being casually carried in their hands. Everyone, don't be afraid. We still have Lu Nantian, the Marquis of Muqin, and Lord Lu Hantian, the peerless genius from the land of blood demons. It is said that Lord Lu Hantian is at the peak of the Celestial Master Realm. When Lord Lu Hantian comes back, these people won't dare to be presumptuous here. The strength of Qing Yang and the others had indeed shocked many warriors in the prefecture, but they were full of confidence in Lu Nantian and Lu Hantian. Not to mention Lu Nantian, Lu Hantian's celestial master realm cultivation was known by almost everyone in the prefecture when they besieged the Marquis mansion of Baichuan. Everyone knew that there was a powerful celestial master hidden in the house of Marquis Qin. Qing Yang sneered and continued to shout, "Do you still have hope in Lu Nantian and Lu Hantian? I'll tell you the truth. Lu Nantian was killed by the experts of the Blue Dragon Hall in the Imperial City, and Lu Hantian was captured by Emperor Qing and locked in the dungeon of the Imperial City, never to see the light of day again. Do you still think these 2 people can appear?" Once these words were spoken, it immediately caused a frenzied uproar among the provincial capital's martial artists. Everyone revealed shocked expressions. Lu Nantian is dead, and Lu Hantian is imprisoned by Emperor Qing? How could this be? Is this person making things up? Looking at the doubtful crowd below, Qing Yang did not have much patience. He said to Qing Yi, "Use your strongest attack and destroy the house of Marquis Qin. I want these ignorant warriors in the prefecture to know if what I said is true." Qing Yi nodded. He took a step forward and instantly arrived in the sky above Muqin Marquis Mansion. His hands formed seals repeatedly. Immediately, waves of terrifying origin energy burst out from his body. The azure light was extremely blazing. It was as if Qing Yi had become an azure sun at this moment. Green sky transforming dragon. With a shout, Qing Yi's hands formed into claws. Countless green lights reached their peak. Then, a giant green dragon nearly 10,000 feet long was born from the green lights. Howl! A terrifying dragon roar was heard. Then, the huge azure dragon looked down at Mu Qin's Marquis mansion. Its cold dragon eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Qing Yi pressed his hands down. The giant green dragon swooped down. Its target was the house of Marquis Qin. Boom! A terrifying explosion resounded. After the green dragon entered the house of Marquis Qin, it twisted its huge body and began to destroy the surrounding buildings in the house of Marquis Qin. Every movement of the dragon could bring about terrible destruction. For a moment, miserable screams filled the Mu Qin Marquis manor. Wherever the azure dragon passed, no matter if it was the pavilions or the cultivators or servants inside, they were all turned into powder under this power and disappeared completely. In an instant, the originally grand and majestic Mu Qin Marquis manor was reduced to dust and debris under the destruction of the green dragon. Within the debris, there was even a small stream of blood that gathered into a small stream. This was the blood of the warriors and servants in the house of Marquis Qin. Basically, the people inside were not spared. Chapter 834. Get Lost. LV Atao clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were filled with sorrow, but even so, he was still helpless. He was too weak, so weak that he didn't even have the qualifications to look at Qing Yang. Qing Lian and Luo Xing also came to LV Atao. Their eyes were red. They also saw what happened to the master of the meteorite. His cultivation was directly crippled, and he would be a complete cripple in the future. But they couldn't do anything because they were too weak. In this world of martial arts where the strong preyed on the weak, they couldn't do anything. Brother LV, don't be too sad, Qing Yang and the others are too strong. Luo Xing gently patted LV Atao's shoulder, but she didn't know how to comfort him. If Brother Zhuo and Senior Hantian were here, perhaps this tragedy wouldn't have happened. Qing Lian's beautiful eyes were also filled with sorrow. She couldn't help but think of Lu Hantian and Zhuoan. One of them was a monstrous figure of the younger generation, and the other was a peerless genius of the older generation. If the two of them were here, how would Qing Yang and the others dare to act recklessly? Haha. Look, even the house of Marquis Qin has been destroyed. Where are Lu Nantian and Lu Hantian? They didn't come out at all. Qing Yang became more and more proud, and his loud voice spread throughout the entire county. He wanted to shatter the hopes of all the martial artists in the county and completely control the county. Of course, according to the agreement, the Vitality Pagoda of the county would be divided equally with the Grand, Cao, and Feng families. The martial artists in the county fell silent. The house of Marquis Qin was destroyed, but Lu Nantian and Lu Hantian still didn't show up. They knew that it was probably like what Qing Yang said. Lu Nantian was dead, and Lu Hantian was imprisoned by Emperor Qing. In the future, Mu Qin County will no longer be under the control of the house of Marquis Qin. My Azure Dragon Halls Qing Yang, Grand Clans 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 Grand Clan. If anyone dares to disobey, the only outcome is death. I think all of you are wise men who know how to adapt to circumstances. Qing Yang was looking down at all the warriors in the provincial capital. The arrogance in his eyes became more and more intense. Qing Yang liked and enjoyed the feeling of controlling the fate of others. Whoosh! As soon as Qing Yang finished speaking, a beam of blood-red light shot over from the void with extreme speed. Qing Yang originally had a smile on his face, but when he sensed the powerful sonic boom that was getting closer and closer, his smile immediately froze. Azure Dragon Art! Qing Yang roared angrily. Countless streams of green energy swirled in the air. Instantly, they transformed into a huge green dragon shadow around him. Bang! The blood-red light was extremely fast. In an instant, it stopped above the green dragon shadow. Only then did Qing Yang notice that the blood-red light was actually a strange blood-red spear. At this moment, the blood-red spear was actually rotating at high speed. Waves of dense blood energy were constantly dissipating. Who is it? Looking at the blood-red spear that stopped the green dragon shadow in front of him, Qing Yang's pupils shrank. He shouted in shock and anger. Unfortunately, he was answered with a long silence. It was as if the spear had suddenly appeared. Pretending to be mysterious, Qing Yang roared coldly. He stomped his feet. Suddenly, the green dragon shadow gradually solidified. The originally illusory dragon shadow had now transformed into a real green dragon. One could see the green dragon scales that were shining with a cold light on its surface. Lord Qing Yang actually directly used the dragon soul materialization. Isn't this a little overkill? Looking at the materialized green dragon, Shu Lingtian frowned slightly. He felt that Qing Yang was making a fuss over nothing. He had actually used the dragon soul materialization. Qing Yi shook his head and said, Lord Qing Yang's actions are likely because he is really angry. After all, he was interrupted halfway through his words. Naturally, he would feel uncomfortable in his heart. At this moment, he should want to completely crush the blood-red spear to vent his anger. In an extremely inconspicuous corner of the province, a sallow-faced middle-aged man looked at the dragon soul materialization of Qing Yang. His eyes flickered as he softly said, It seems that Qing Yang has advanced to the Xuanzuan realm after this period of cultivation. Unfortunately, so what if the dragon soul materialization is real? The gap between Qing Yang and me is getting bigger and bigger. As he spoke, he stomped his feet. Immediately, the blood-red spear that was pressing against the green dragon in the sky suddenly hummed. Countless amounts of blood energy condensed around it. Crack! The materialized green dragon was directly shattered under the increased power of the blood-red spear. Under Qing Yang's stunned gaze, the spear pierced through his collarbone. Swoosh! Under the powerful force of the blood-red spear, Qing Yang's entire body was blasted flying, and he was directly nailed to the origin energy tower by the blood-red spear. At this moment, many cultivators in the province looked at Qing Yang, who was originally in high spirits and threatening them, but after he finished speaking, he was actually directly pierced through by a blood-red spear that came out of nowhere and nailed to the origin energy tower. As they looked at Qing Yang, who was in an extremely sorry state at this moment and recalled his complacent expression from before, many people revealed a trace of schadenfreude in their eyes. It was even to the extent that Ji Lan Haohai, Feng Tian, and Cao Ji recovered from their initial shock. An indistinct smile hung on their faces, and the ridicule within it was rather dense. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Qing Yang's expression was slightly dispirited. As for the changes in the expressions of the others, he naturally noticed all of them. Rage attacked his heart, and he spat out another mouthful of blood as he shouted furiously, Who exactly is it? The place where the blood-red spear pierced was very accurate. It actually just happened to pierce through his collarbone, thus sealing the meridians around his collarbone, causing him to be unable to use the slightest bit of yuan power. Didn't you very arrogantly say that we, the cultivators of the province, should know when to submit to the circumstances? If I remember correctly, these words should be exclusive to the victors, but look at you being nailed to the origin energy tower like a stray dog. Don't you feel that your words from before are very laughable? A mocking laugh slowly rang out from an inconspicuous corner of the province. After that, a middle-aged man with a sallow complexion slowly walked out with the corners of his mouth raised. This middle-aged man was Zhuowen, who had used the 100 transformation technique to change his appearance and aura. When Qin Nai was crippled, Zhuowen had actually already rushed to the province. Unfortunately, what caused his gaze to darken was that the members of the Zhuo family had actually been taken out by Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li and taken the initiative to hand them over to Qing Yang. This action caused Zhuowen's heart to be filled with anger. Therefore, when Qing Yang crippled Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li, he did not appear. For two selfish fellows like Qin Nai and Shenyuan Li, Zhuowen was too lazy to save them. At that time, the master of the meteorite's attitude of not wanting to cause trouble was also seen by Zhuowen. Therefore, Zhuowen also looked on coldly from the sidelines when the master of the meteorite met with misfortune. Since the other party had sold out his family, Then what obligation did he, Zhuoan, have to save such a person? He, Zhuoan, was not that cheap. Zhuoan's appearance immediately attracted the attention of Grand Haohai and the others in the sky. A trace of astonishment appeared in their eyes. Although Qing Yang was only at the initial stage of the Xuanzuan realm, he possessed a third-grade dragon soul. If his dragon soul was materialized, his strength would be much stronger than an ordinary Xuanzuan realm cultivator. He was comparable to an advanced stage Xuanzuan realm cultivator. However, Qing Yang was unable to resist that casual spear and was pierced through by the blood spear. Clearly, the strength of this middle-aged man who had suddenly appeared was not simple. He was probably at least at the sovereign stage. Grand Haohai's eyes flickered. He suddenly leapt to the sky above Zhuoan and looked down at Zhuoan. He smiled and said, "Your strength is not bad. It's a waste of your talent to devote yourself to this small Muqin county. If you're willing to become a guest elder of my grand family is willing to nurture you. Of course, even if Qing Yang is unhappy with you, my grand family can help you take care of this matter. What do you think?" As he spoke, Grand Haohai looked down at Zhuoan with a smile. That blood spear was extremely stunning. Grand Haohai could tell that this middle-aged man before him was not simple. Therefore, he took the risk of going against Qing Yang and wanted to recruit this middle-aged man before him. At this moment, Qing Yang had already escaped from the blood spear with the help of Qing Yi and Xu Lingtian. His gaze was fixed on Zhuoan as he coldly said, "Patriarch Grand, recruiting this bastard means that you're going against my Blue Dragon Hall." Grand Haohai narrowed his eyes and said with a faint smile, "Your Excellency Qing Yang, I think you're twisting words and forcing logic. You can't represent the Blue Dragon Hall. Who I recruit has nothing to do with you, right?" Qing Yang coldly snorted and said, "My Blue Dragon Hall must take this person's life. What's the use of your grand family recruiting him? He'll still die in the end." Hearing this, Grand Haohai looked down at Zhuoan and said indifferently, "You heard it too. Now that you've offended the Blue Dragon Hall, if you don't have a backer, you'll definitely die. Joining my grand family is the best choice." Zhuoan slowly raised his head and quietly stared at Grand Haohai. However, he felt that it was somewhat ridiculous. This Grand Haohai had framed him many times. Now that he had changed his appearance, this person actually came to recruit him. If Grand Haohai knew that the middle-aged man before him was Zhuoan, who knew what Grand Haohai would think? Seeing that Zhuoan did not reply for a long time, Grand Haohai frowned and said, "What? Do you think my grand family is not good? If you don't join my grand family, not only will you be hunted down by the Blue Dragon Hall, you'll also be hunted down by my grand family." When Grand Haohai said this, Zhuoan narrowed his eyes. This Grand Haohai actually intended to threaten him. "I'm not interested in your grand family. Scram." After saying that, not only was Grand Haohai stunned, the others were also stunned. Grand Haohai was the grand family's clan head, one of the 5 great families. At this moment, he personally came to invite him. Not only was he flatly rejected by this person, he was even asked to scram. "What did you say just now? You dare to speak to me like this?" Grand Haohai asked again, somewhat unable to recover from his shock. "Why wouldn't I dare? I asked you to scram, why aren't you scramming?" You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.